test together with the RT-PCR. Is that sort of allowed already or tolerated by the DOH? What can you say about that?
Sir, thank you, sir. What we're saying, sir, is that the antigen should not be used as a border control because it has a really high false negative and a false positive. It's so hard. It's so hard to determine. But if you're saying that if you do have patients positive for RT-PCR, and then you can trace this contact trace and use this surveillance for the antigen. That's what they did in Baguio, sir, in Mayor Magalong, and they were able to do the surveillance. So that can use in conjunction, but the antigen as mere border testing, it might not help, sir. I don't think it will because marami makakalusot and it's so hard to determine.
Yes, Yusek, but the main problem confronting many LGUs is that they don't have the molecular lab, no? And then the waiting time for the results to come out is 5 to 7 days. So if we don't impose any sort of test on the persons coming in, so we have to solely rely on the clinical assessment to be done by the medical team. And as I said, a number of the persons found to be infected are the asymptomatic, no? So the league and the governors are requesting that we be authorized to make use of the antigen test because it's cheaper, a lot cheaper, and the result comes out within 10 minutes. And if found positive, they may either be refused entry or they may be put under quarantine, but immediately they'll be subjected to RT-PCR test, okay? So we are safe in that respect. However, if the result is negative and we know it may be false negative and may actually the person is positive, so we may allow them to enter, but they will be under strict monitoring of the barangay officials and the BHERTs. So we tell them you comply strictly with the minimum standards. You are still not sure. We are not sure that you are 100% negative. So there will be close monitoring. But this is the main problem that really affects or concerns a lot of LGUs which do not have the molecular laboratory. We cannot make use of the PCR test even if we want to because of the cost. And the waiting time is quite long. So we have suggested that the best thing really is to use preliminarily an antigen test just to find out whether you're positive or negative. And so, and then coupled with the clinical assessment, we feel more comfortable doing this. So I hope DOH should look into this. We should categorize those provinces with the molecular laboratory, and they can make use of the PCR test. But how about a big number of LGUs which do not have the molecular laboratory? So that's really a big problem for all of us, and I hope the DOH can find a way by which we can use the only possibly reasonably priced test kit, and that the result comes out very quickly. So anyway, I would like to entertain other questions from other governors. I'll recognize EVP Governor Susan Yap of Tarlac po. Go ahead, EVP Susan.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to ask you, Sec Vega, ano po yung guidelines or protocols regarding positive asymptomatics? Are they, do you allow them to do home quarantine sa ibang areas? I believe here in Manila, hindi na ho nalalagay sa mga referral facilities ang positive asymptomatics. But probably that's why we're seeing a spike in cases, no? Kami po sa probinsya namin, all even asymptomatics are segregated and are not allowed to stay home.
Ma'am, Mr. Chairman, Governor Yap, thank you for the question po. Very true po. Positive asymptomatics, in other words, they can easily transmit the virus. In other words, they can easily infect people, and you know, the transmission rate would be high. So the best really is to isolate them. In fact, if you're positive, even if you're asymptomatic and even with mild, then you really have to go to an isolation facility. It's much better than in your home, wherein you might be able to, you'll be infecting your family. Tama yun, Governor Susan.
So hindi po mandatory that if you're positive asymptomatic that you be placed in a medical facility. You have the option to stay
In an
home.
isolation facility, ma'am. I think if the LGU actually sees that you are positive, even if you're asymptomatic, then you must be isolated, ma'am, for 14 days. It's
Thank you.
mandatory in a isolation facility, not in a medical facility, because this will actually congest the hospitals, and there might be no room for the moderate and the severe. So it is much better if they are quarantined in a TTMF or an Oplan Kalinga hotel, but they must be isolated.
Thank you.
Okay, any other governor would like to ask a question to Yusek Vega? Apparently, we're all... oh, okay, Sandy. Okay, excuse me, Yusek Vega. I'd like to recognize DBM Secretary Wendell Abisado. Good morning po, Sec Abisado. And also DILG Yusek Epi Densing. And of course, I recognize the Governor of Bataan, Governor Abet Garcia. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions to be propounded, excuse me. Okay, ED Sandy, okay, go ahead.
Yusek, we just need some clarification from DOH regarding the
Sir,
use.
I cannot hear. I, the audio is very low.
I think
I cannot hear
Sandy,
the
excuse me,
question.
I think I asked the question, Sandy. You still want to ask a clarificatory question? Huh? No, I already asked him about that. Oh, sige. Okay, I think Yusek Vega, I asked a while ago whether the saliva test is already authorized by DOH. And what was your answer?
We are still waiting for the validation of the RITM in terms of the saliva test for the PCR, sir. So we will await their guidelines on this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Yusik Vega. Since there are no more questions, I would like to extend our thanks, profound thanks to you for sharing the vital information to the LGUs, and I'm sure the LGUs will be guided accordingly in our fight against COVID-19. Maraming salamat po. Keep safe po.
Salamat, Gov. Salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you po.
It's a pleasure to meet all of you.
Thank you po. Now, Yusik Abisado muna siguro. With the kind indulgence of Yusik Epi, pwede ba, can we recognize first Secretary Wendell Abisado of DBM, Yusik Epi?
Go, okay. I'm a listener right now. Nakikinig po ako sa pinag-uusapan. So, kahit hindi na po ako, mas importante sila. Nakapag-uusap na rin tayo before eh.
Okay, thank you, Yusik Epi. Okay, Sec Wendell, good morning po.
Good morning, Gov. Good morning sa lahat ng ating mga members ng League of Provinces of the Philippines. I'm happy to be with you. Though we're in this kind of situation, but sabi nga, the work must go on.
Sige
So,
po, can
Gov,
you give us go ahead po, Yusik, Sec Wendell, opo.
yes, Gov. We're all set for the implementation of the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas case. The decision of which you were the ponente. And that is why it's just the proper that you as president now of the league should really pursue its implementation. And we are with you, Gov, and all the rest of the governors. Matter of fact, last January 22, 2021, at the onset of the current year, the Secretary of Finance, together with the Secretary of Budget and Management, and the Secretary of the Department of Interior and Local Government, and the National Economic and Development Authority sent up to the President a draft executive order directing the full devolution of certain functions of the executive branch to the local governments as a result of the decision. And of course, we all know what the decision is all about. But for purposes of a more clearer and deeper understanding of the matter, I will ask later on the director of in charge for this to come up with and to present rather the important issues and the coverage of the said ruling with regard to precisely the current share that the LGUs are getting vis-a-vis the shares that you will be getting as a result of the decision. You see, a technical working group which we initiated together with the DILG, the NEDA, DOF, and the Civil Service Commission, including other agencies such as the Development Academy of the Philippines and the Presidential Communications Operations Office, conducted several consultation meetings with the national government agencies and the local government units to discuss and come up with the national government strategy to implement the aforesaid measure. And precisely one of the outputs developed by the technical working group is the executive order directing the full devolution of certain functions of the national government to the local governments. Bob, do you have a copy of the proposed executive order?
We have a draft copy po ng EO.
Yeah, that's the
And
same copy that we have. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what we're using right now. Has it been revised already, or is still the one that we have to rely on?
That's still the one that we're using, and we're waiting for the presidential action, Gov. But nonetheless, let me just so we can go to the more important issues with respect to the financials of this decision. Gov, Director Aris Makasbak of our local government coordination bureau is around, and may I ask him to make the presentation if you would allow, Gov, so everybody would know.
Sige po, go ahead po with the presentation. Opo.
Okay. Director Aris, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. So to Governor Presby Velasco and to the other officials and members of the League of Provinces of the Philippines and to the other resource persons that you have invited, good morning to all of you. So my presentation will cover the discussion of on the fiscal implications of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas case and the salient features of the draft executive order, which was prepared by the technical working group initiated by the DBM and composed of the DBM, the ILG, NEDA, and the DOF, among others. Next slide, please. Okay, so next slide. So as you know, in 2018, the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas and Garcia petitions directed the national government to change the basis of the computation of the just share of local government units from national internal revenue taxes to all national taxes, and to include the collections of customs duties by the Bureau of Customs, among others. So on this slide, presented graphically is the expansion of the base of the computation of the ERA shares of the local government units, which we now call national tax allotment starting 2022, before and after the Mandanas and Garcia ruling. So the left pie chart shows the basis in the computation of the ERA before the Supreme Court ruling, and the bigger pie is the national taxes, and the subset of it is the national internal revenue taxes. So based on the Section 284 of the Local Government Code of 1991, which was declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, 40% goes to the local government units as their ERA, and the 60% of the national internal revenue taxes is left to the national government. But after the Mandanas ruling is implemented, as shown on the right pie chart, we can see that the basis of the computation of the ERA is expanded from national internal revenue taxes only to all national taxes, which effectively means expansion of resources transferred to local government units. Next slide. So based on the latest computation of the Department of Finance of the collected national taxes in 2019, there is an estimated amount of 234.6 billion pesos that will be added to the supposed ERA shares of local government units in 2022. So on this table, what we are trying to present is that before the Mandanas ruling is implemented, the expected ERA shares of local government units in 2022 is only around 848.16 billion pesos. But after the Mandanas ruling is implemented, wherein we will already include all national taxes in the computation, it will climb up to 1.083 trillion pesos, or 234.6 billion peso increase. And that is around 27.66% increase. And in the economic terms, that is equivalent to 0.93% of the gross domestic product, which basically puts the local government units in a more critical role in helping to achieve the country's development objectives and growth targets. Next slide. So looking from the point of view of local government units, the graph shows 55.7% year-on-year expansion of program allocation of ERA from 2021 to 2022. And this is equivalent to around 387 billion peso increase in the ERA shares of local government units from 695.49 billion pesos in 2021 to 1.082 trillion in 2022. Next slide. So since the 234 billion peso increase in the ERA shares of local government units will result to a tantamount decrease in the fiscal resources available to the national government for its key programs and projects, the measure identified by the technical working group initiated by the DBM is to fully devolve the certain services and functions to the local government units consistent with Section 17 of the Local Government Code of 1991. So the provision of basic services must already be fully devolved to the local government units, considering the fiscal implication, and if we want to ensure fiscal sustainability and at the same time strengthen the local fiscal autonomy of local government units. And we also see this as the measure to finally put an end to the long withstanding problem of duplication of programs and financing between the national government and local government units. So as already mentioned by the Secretary, a draft executive order directing the devolution of these functions and services to the local government units has already been submitted to the Office of the President for consideration. So the draft executive order was prepared by DBM, DILG, NEDA, and DOF in coordination also with the other agencies like the Civil Service Commission, the Development Academy of the Philippines, and the Presidential Communications and Operations Office. Next slide. So let me now briefly discuss the salient features of the draft executive order which we submitted to the Office of the President. Next slide. So in a nutshell, these are the salient features of the draft executive order. The first one is the delineation of the roles and responsibilities of the national government and local government units. And then we also have the preparation of the devolution transition plans by the national government agencies, And then we also have the establishment of Growth Equalization Fund, the creation of Committee on Devolution, and then we also have the capacity building programs for local government units, the concomitant need to strengthen the planning, investment programming and budgeting linkage, and the monitoring and evaluation systems, the development of communications plan and strategy, and the options for the affected personnel. So let me discuss the salient sections or provisions of the draft executive order. Next slide. So in section 4 of the draft executive order, the principles and guidelines for the devolution of services and functions are prescribed. So we just want to emphasize in the executive order that the conduct of the functional and organizational review by the department secretaries and agency heads shall be guided by these two principles. Number one is that the proper role of the national government is to set national policy and service delivery standards and assist, oversee, and monitor the local government units, complementary to the stronger role that the local government units are expected to assume starting 2022. And on the part also of the national government, in coordination with the local government units, the national government shall formulate and pursue a long-term institutional development program for the local government units in order to strengthen their capacities and capabilities to fully assume the devolved functions, consistent with Section 17 of the Local Government Code of 1991 and other relevant laws. Now, on the part of the local government units, they are also expected to undertake the necessary actions in order to prepare for the greater roles and responsibilities that they are expected to assume as a result of the full devolution of functions and services from the national government. So presently the DBM, in coordination with the other members of the technical working group and our development partners like the Philippines Institute for Development Studies, have ongoing activities and policy studies to further refine and update the delineation of expenditure assignments across the different levels of local government units. Next slide. Okay, so in section 5, we have the preparation of devolution transition plans by the national government agencies. And these devolution transition plans are intended to ensure the smooth implementation of the devolution transition. So in the executive order, the national government agencies are directed to prepare and implement these devolution transition plans. So the elements of the devolution transition plans that shall be the national government agencies shall include the programs and projects to be devolved and the corresponding level of LGU to which they will be devolved, including the phasing or strategy for devolution. Another salient feature is the definition of standards for the delivery of devolved services, particularly the minimum cost, the scope, the quality of services, and the recommended organizational setup and minimum manpower complement for the local government units. Then we also have the strategy and phasing of the capacity development programs for the local government units. And then we also have the framework for monitoring and performance assessment of the local government units, including the imposition of sanctions consistent with those allowed by existing pertinent laws. And organizational effectiveness proposal containing the modification in the organizational structure and the staffing complement of the departments and agencies in order to assume their steering functions. So the technical working group has been conducted a series of consultation meetings with the national government agencies concerned to discuss the progress in the development of the respective devolution transition plans of those national government agencies. Next slide. So another salient feature of the draft executive order is the establishment of a growth equalization fund, which, by the way, is an input of the leagues of local government units when we first presented the present effort of the national government agencies to fully devolve certain functions. So sinadjust po ito ng mga leagues. So this growth equalization fund is expected to address the problem of marginalization, unequal development, and high poverty incidence across different levels of local government units. The Growth Equalization Fund will cover the funding requirements of programs, projects, and activities of poor, disadvantaged, and lagging LGUs to gradually enable them to fully and efficiently assume the functions and services that will be devolved to them under this proposed devolution plan. The Growth Equalization Fund shall be released to the local government units in accordance with the rules and regulations to be prescribed by the Development Budget Coordination Committee and shall be subject to the mechanisms and guidelines to ensure the equitable, performance-based, and time-bound allocation and distribution of the fund to the beneficiary local government units. Next slide. So we also have the creation of a committee on devolution under Section 7 of the draft executive order. A committee on devolution shall be constituted to oversee the implementation of the executive order and to monitor and evaluate of the devolution transition plans of the national government agencies as well as of the local government units. And the committee is also expected to compel compliance and pass impose sanctions against the non-performing national government agencies and LGUs as may be allowed under relevant laws and come up with recommendations, the annual assessments, and advocate for good practices. So the Committee on Devolution shall be chaired by the Executive Secretary, and the members are the secretaries of DBM, DILG, NEDA, and Finance, and the presidents of the 4 leagues of local government units, including the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. Next slide. So an important feature of the executive order is the capacity development programs for the local government units. In view of the devolution of certain functions from the national government agencies, the local government units are directed to formulate their respective capacity development agenda based on the assessment framework and guidelines to be issued by the Local Government Academy of the Philippines of the DILG. And the LGUs shall be guided, among others, by the strategy for capacity development of the local government units, as contained in the devolution transition plans of the national government agencies, the local development trusts, and the performance goals and objectives of the local government units. The DILG, through the Local Government Academy, shall also institute mechanisms to harmonize the capacity development interventions by the DBM, NEDA, DOF, and all national government agencies concerned, including the Development Academy of the Philippines and possibly third-party service providers to ensure the efficient utilization of resources for the purpose of capacity building programs. Additionally, the Development Academy of the Philippines shall also institute mechanisms to strengthen the capabilities of local chief executives to enable them to efficiently and effectively perform their roles in implementing policies, programs, and projects at the local level. The Development Academy of the Philippines has already commenced the implementation of their local government executive and managers course, which basically aims to train local government executives and department managers on the development, economic, fiscal, and governance perspectives of running the local government units. Now, on the part of the Bureau of Local Government Finance, of course, when it comes to the area of revenue generation and fiscal management, that Bureau will continue to conduct capacity building programs. And on the part of the DILG and DBM, we will also include the capacity development of local government units in the area of public financial management, specifically in the area of local planning, investment programming, expenditure management, and budgeting in order to ensure that the allocation of the revenue allotments of local government units are allocated for basic services in accordance with pertinent laws. Next slide. Okay, so the under section 9, We also emphasize the concomitant strengthening of planning, investment programming, and budgeting linkage, and the monitoring and evaluation system institutionalization under the executive order. The vertical and horizontal linkages across the different levels of government in development planning, investment programming, and budgeting shall be strengthened, and the areas of convergence must be identified in order to align the national government, regional, and local priorities and ensure that these national and subnational priorities are addressed in the most efficient manner using both the resources of the national government and local government units. Likewise, results-based monitoring and evaluation system shall be in place, and we expect the DILG, the DBM, and the DOF, as well as the national government agencies to take the lead in this particular system that we want to establish or institutionalize at the local level. Next slide. Okay, so we also have under Section 10 the development of communications plan and strategy, and the national government shall take the lead in the development of a strong communications plan and shall pursue strategies to convey to the general public as well as to the other stakeholders the delineation of functions between the national government agencies and the local government units. So for this purpose, the national government agencies, both the oversight agencies, the DBM, the ILG, DOF, and NEDA, and the affected national government agencies shall designate focal officials and personnel to participate in these communications efforts. On the part of the local government units, of course, we also expect them to formulate their respective communications plan and strategies to effectively carry out the devolution efforts. Next slide. Okay, so this is the last slide or portion, last slide of my presentation. The options for the affected personnel, which is provided under sections 11 to 17 of the draft executive order. So we have identified basically three options for the personnel that may be affected by the devolution of functions and services from the executive branch to local government units. The first option that the affected personnel have is to transfer to the other units or offices within the department, agency, or GOCC concerned. Of course, we also emphasize that it should be without reduction in pay. And then they also have the option to transfer to the other agencies in the executive branch, also without reduction in pay. And the third option that they may avail is to avail of the retirement benefits and separation incentives that may be authorized in the executive order to be issued by the president. And should those personnel apply to the local government units, they can be given preference to fill the vacant positions that will perform the functions devolved to the local government units. However, we just want to emphasize here that the reemployment of this personnel shall be considered as a new entry to the civil service, and they will be subject to the compensation system and salary schedule being implemented by the local government units that will absorb them. So we also want to emphasize that these options for the affected personnel, there shall be no involuntary separation, termination, or layoff of permanent personnel of the national government agencies affected by devolution. So just to allay the fear of some personnel of the national government agencies. The DBM, together with the DILG and the Civil Service Commission, shall develop and issue the guidelines as may be necessary to ensure the fair, orderly, and transparent implementation of these options for the affected national government personnel. I think that's the last portion of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sec Wendell.
Just for you to know how much support we're giving the league, with me is the Undersecretary in charge of Policy and Strategy, Undersecretary Laura Pasqua, the functional group head in charge of local government, Regional Coordination Bureau, Undersecretary Herman Amelia. We have the Assistant Secretary in charge of Internal Service, Assistant Secretary Ike Bravo, and we have the Director for Legal Service, Director Ryan Lisa, as well as even our Regional Director for Region 11, Director Gary Martel is with us, as I'm here in Davao right now, Mr. President. And so we just like to assure you that we are all with you in pursuing the fastest and smooth implementation of
Thank you, Sec Wendell. Now, we will entertain questions from the governors. Who would like to ask the first question? Gobro Dito Albano ho would like to propound the question. Go
Yes,
ahead.
good morning, Sec. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Sec, may idea na ba tayo what agencies will be devolved to us? Kasi parang hindi ko makita masyado yung mga agencies kanina nung pine-present. Kung ano lang itong mga agencies na dapat i-devolve sa local government para malaman namin yung ratio nung ibababaan niyan lang pera sa amin dun sa made-devolve na agency.
Sec, muted ho yata kayo. Can you unmute us?
Thank you. Yes, thank you
Yeah,
for
thank you.
that question, Governor Rodito. Director Aris, can you flashback and basta lamang ang talagang pinagbabasihan natin dito on the devolved functions ay yung Section 17 Section 17 ng Local Government Code, that for purposes of clarity, Director Aris?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I had a limited connection. If I get the question correctly, what are the
Alin departments and agencies whose functions are going to be devolved to the local governments?
Yes, sir. Initially, sir, we have identified the SWD. We also have the DA, the DOH, the DPWH, and we also met po with the DOLE and the Department of Tourism, among others. So the affected national government agencies po were identified under National Budget Memorandum number 138. So in the annex of that National Budget Memorandum, naka-identify po doon yung mga national government agencies and the corresponding services that may be considered for devolution.
May I ask a question, Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Ano yung LGSF? Anong agency yung LGSF? Local Government Support Fund.
So,
Sa
Agency ba yun?
DBM yan eh. Oh.
O amount lang yun? May tao ba doon sa LGSF?
DBM yung LGSF, di ba?
that's really Office of the President.
Sir,
Kami lang ang pinagdadaanan the approval of all of these projects under LGSF. Galing talaga sa Office of the President.
Pero walang personnel yan, di ba, Sec?
Walang personnel. But what we're saying is that
It's only money. Money lang yan.
yeah,
So, itong monies lang ang nakikita namin. Pero ito, hindi personnel.
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
But since we're precisely transferring now the funds to the locals, siyempre pati yung mga services and functions being funded by these monies will now also be transferred to the local government units. Hindi pa lang natin napag-uusapan dito ang lawak ng sinasakop ng mga personahe gawa ng mayroon pang transition devolution plans na isusumite ang mga national government agencies sa DBM para maaralan talaga ang total din na pangangailangan kung sakasakaling may mga options kasi na mangyayari yung transfer within the agencies or transfer to other agencies o yung iba naman kung ma-absorb ng local government units. So ito yung mga combination ng mga pag-aaralan pa. Kaya nga importante at mahalaga yung devolution transition plans, Mr. President, Governor Rubito. Thank you.
Thank you, Sec. Ibig sabihin, itong mga perang ito, yun ang itatransfer sa amin, bale.
Yes.
So kami na
Yes.
lahat ang mamamahala nito mga perang to. Ang inaano ko lang, tinatanong ko lang, Sec, yung personnel ba nito mga ito matatransfer din sa amin?
Depende nga, tulad ng sinabi ko, depende doon sa magiging resulta ng transition devolution plan na isusumite ng mga national government agencies. Kasi nga, isa sa ayos nila yan, kung meron yung ma-absorb pa nila in their other units or operating units, edi okay lang yon. Yung iba namang hindi, ay maaring po pwedeng ilipat sa ibang departments. Yun naman namang hindi talaga, kailangan mag-retire or mag-separate from the service with incentives, no? Kasi gano'n naman talaga yun. So ito, ano pa ito? Gagawin at pag-uusapan. But nonetheless, ang pinag-uusapan lang natin dito na talagang malinaw na maililipat na ay yung pundo from the national to the local governments pursuant to the decision.
Thank you, Sec. Most welcome. Yung pondo, kung malilipat sa amin, very welcome po yun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sec. Wendell and Gov. Rudito. May I recognize Gov. Ben Ebardoni?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sec. Wendell, good morning po.
Good morning din, Gov.
Maganda ho yung tanong ni Gov. Rodito para klaro lang ho. Kasi 'di ba ang estimate na total na transfer sa mga LGUs around 324 billion ho ba? Ganun ho ba?
234 billion.
234.
Hmm.
Pero ito, sumusobra ho kayo ngayon itong estimate ninyo, 294.
Aris, can you reply to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much po, sir. So, just to clarify lang po, I think this list that you have, sir, it was prepared way back 2019 at the onset of our efforts. So, nung nagsisimula pa lang po kami na gawin yung devolution transition natin, ito po yung initially na programs and projects under the budgets of these agencies that may be considered for devolution starting 2022. In fact, wala pa po dito in 2019 dahil yung early 2020 po ito, early 2019 if I'm not mistaken. So this list has already been updated na po. And these amounts, of course, they include PS components. So posibleng mabawasan pa nga po yan. So it's as mentioned by the Secretary already, it's the national government agencies po that will determine the programs and projects and that may be devolved and the corresponding LGUs to which those programs and services will be devolved to. So yung mga amounts po na to, sir, hindi naman po yan hindi pa yan finalized. Ito lang initially yung mga program, yung total na mga programs and projects that fall within the expenditure assignments of the local government units na identify po namin na pwedeng i-discontinue na starting 2022.
Okay. Thank you, Sec. Thank you, Sec. Now, my follow-up question is, automatic na po na ma-allocate for 2022 national budget yung 234 billion. Tama po ba?
Tama, tama.
Opo. Now, ang tanong na lang natin, how much of that 234 billion will go to personal services which will be devolved to the LGUs, and how much of that will go to POPs? Yun ho ang magiging discussion na ho ninyo because of doon sa committee level. Tama po, Sec?
Ganito po yun, Gov. Following the provisions under the local government code, yung idadagdag na yan, magiging kaparte din ng kabuuan na source of revenues ninyo in the preparation of your respective budgets. And what does the local government say when it comes to personnel? Meron yung not more than 45 up to not more than 55. Depende po sa classification ng local government unit. So, yun yung 45% or 55% for PS, the rest for recurring expenses, and 20% of that will be for the development fund, 5% for calamity fund, and so on and so forth. Ganun lang din po magiging batayan natin sa paggamit ng additional IRA na ibibigay sa mga local governments.
Ganun po. So, ibig sabihin po, hindi po uniform ang mga personnel na i-devolve sa amin. Halimbawa, sa Eastern Samar po, ang i-devolve halimbawa sa health, magkakaiba ho ng sa Romblon at saka Siquijor. Ganun ho ba yun? Kasi magkakaiba po ang classification po namin eh. Ganun po ba yun? Or talagang fixed na itong mga nurses na ito, halimbawa itong etc., itong mga taga-DA, yung mga at saka DSWD, sa inyo na yan. A certain number of items, yun ang i-devolve po sa amin. Tapos babawasin po yun dun sa kabuuan na increase ng IRA namin. Tama po ba yun, Sec?
Hindi po mababawasan yung IRA ninyo as already stated. Kung ano yung magiging share ninyo from the increase borne out of by the decision, mapupunta talaga sa inyo yan. Yung personnel po, sabi ko nga, depende kung anong klaseng LGU ang kapupuntahan ng hindi lang pondo or kundi pati yung mga personahe. Pero nasa local government units po yan kung tatanggapin ninyo o hindi. Dahil hindi naman po mandatory yung absorption ng mga personnel from the national to the local. Hindi po automatic 'yon. Hindi po automatic. Opo.
Maganda ho, maganda. Klaro ho, Mr. Secretary. Maraming salamat po kasi yung iba sa amin, hindi na rin kami tatanggap ng mga devolved personnel para for projects na lang yung... Anyway, Mr. Secretary, maraming salamat po. At least, baka daw maubos lang yung increase ng IRA sa personal services. Hindi naman mangyayari po. At least, very clear na ho na by 2022, i-increase yung IRA ng mga LGUs. Now, yung sa mga personnel, yun ang pag-uusapan pa ho. Tama po, Secretary? Ano?
Opo.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Sec, Wendell, salamat po.
Pwede pong mag-follow up, Mr. President?
Who's that? Gobro dito?
Dax. Yung Dax po.
Governor Dax.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you po, Mr. President. It's good to see you, Sec Wendell.
Good to see you.
First po, pwede po bang makapagtanong, Sec, kasi po for purposes of our local planning, natapos naman na po yung collection period ng BIR and Customs ng 2019. So baka naman pong possible na po ba kayang makuha na yung kabuuang amount and how much yung matatanggap ng bawat probinsya, halimbawa bawat LGU according to the law that distributes the IRA. And siguro attached to that question is nabanggit ni Director Aris yung growth equalization fund na kumbaga i-redistribute yung pondo. I don't know. I would like to inquire lang if there's a legal basis for that, or are we confined to follow the law that dictates the sharing of each LGU?
Okay. On the first question, GovDax, I think we'll have to link up with DOF on the matter since they're the ones who really makes the certification as to the level of collection on a given period. And on the second question, Director Aris, what was really the philosophy behind this provision on the issue raised by Governor Dax.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Good morning po, Governor Dax, our constant partner po sa dialogue namin with the local government units. So the Growth Equalization Fund po was formulated and proposed based on the suggestions of the local government units na rin po. So may mga nagsasabi po kasi ng mga LGU or local officials na yung functions and services na posibleng ma-devolve sa kanila ay mas malaki kumpara dun sa additional ERA na matatanggap nila. So the Growth Equalization Fund po is intended to somehow close the gap or address the problem of fiscal imbalance. So kung mas malaki yung mga local government units po na mas malaki yung function nila as compared to their additional ERA, sila po yung potentially na makakakuha dun sa Growth Equalization Fund. So yung mga specific mechanism naman po natin dyan are still being studied by the DBM in coordination with our partner agencies like the DILG, and we also invite yung PIDS po. So tinitingnan din po namin yung resulta ng mga previous studies na ginawa ng ating development partners like PIDS para mai-consider po namin at may factor in namin doon sa mechanism and guidelines that will govern the allocation and release of the Growth Equalization Fund. So we, as much as possible, we want to integrate the factor of equitable sharing or equitable allocation. We also want to integrate po yung performance-based factor para naman mabigyan din natin ng somehow premium yung mga well-performing LGUs, and time-bound allocation and distribution also of the fund to the local government units. As to the amount naman po, of course, it's the DBCC that will determine that based on the available fiscal space that we have. So this will be on top of the ERA na nakikita po namin, and the aggregate amount will depend po on the available fiscal space that we have at the national level.
Director Aris, mag-clarify lang ko sa sinabi mo. So, yung tanong ko kasi is that yung kumbaga yung growth equalization, parang hindi naman tayo opposed doon na gusto ng iba na ma-redistribute kasi mas kinakailangan ng mga lower income LGUs. So hindi tayo opposed doon. Ang tanong ko lang, if it's coming from the funds as an effect of the ruling, di ba po yung pondong yun ay governed by the law that determines the formulation of ERA. So kung ganon, wala po yata tayong legal basis to redistribute, or are you saying that the funds that you are going to redistribute or growth fund na sinasabi mo will be coming on top of the additional ERA or NATA? Ganun po ba yun, Director
Yes,
Aris?
sir. Sorry, sir. So with the permission of the Secretary, yes, sir. The legal basis po will be the General Appropriations Act. So we are studying for the mechanism, and that may also be included in the 2022 National Expenditure Program that the President will submit to Congress for budget authorization purposes. So para pong yung nakikita namin, parang magiging local government support fund po siya. So it may be part of the allocations to local government units, and the policies will be prescribed po, will be proposed by the executive, and of course the final say will be the Congress kung ano po yung mga governing policies na ilalagay nila dun sa governing special provisions in the GAA.
So that means, Secretary, that it will be
Govdax, that being said, ang concern nga kasi ng mga ibang locals, baka mas marami kaming gagawin kaysa dun sa idadagdag na pundo sa amin. So, iniisip ng national, sige, baka naman po pwedeng i-ride on natin dun sa General Appropriations Act, yung isang item doon that will provide for yung equal growth fund, equalization fund, para makarespond tayo dun sa pangangailangan yun. And that will really be on top of what you have received, you're going to receive from the decision. Hindi naman yun kukunin doon sa kung ano na yung ibibigay sa inyo. Dagdag nga po yan dahil nakikita ng national na talagang meron ding mga mahihirapan ng mga locals pagdating sa implementation ng decision. So, para din po sa kapakanan ng mga LGUs yan, GovDax.
Thank you po, Sec Wendell. I think that's a very welcome assurance sa amin lahat na on top pala, meron pa po kayo talagang ibibigay na equalization for those LGUs that need it. So Sec, isa na lang po yung sa mga pondo na yung sa darating na era for 2022 para lang makapagplano kami kasi kung aakyat man ang era namin, gusto namin sana ngayon pa lang pag-isipan na anong popondohan. Saan po kami kaya pwedeng makahingi ng data niyan kung per LGU, per province, per city, municipality, magkano po kaya ang magiging figure para lang po maka-advance planning na po kami. Opo.
Si Yusik Laura, are you there? Because she is our strongest link with the DOF. Can you answer GovDax's question?
Actually, Governor Dogs, we have already a simulation based on yung preliminary estimates of yung natural tax allotment coming from the 2019. So assuming that there is no change in the population or the land area of the LGUs, we can provide that already to you, on the assumption that these are preliminary estimates for planning purposes.
Thank you po, Yusek. Thank you, Sec. If it's all right, po, sana po, even if it's just estimates, maganda po siguro kung you can communicate the figures to the LGUs, to us sa LPP and sa ULA para we can already give them an indication of the figures so we can all already start planning how it can be put to best use in 2022 po. Thank you again, Yusek Laura. Thank you po, Sec Bell. Thank you, Mr. President. Back to you na po.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
Mr. President, good morning. Artia po.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Secretary Abisado, and to all my fellow governors and all other participants in this morning's LPP meeting. Salamat po dun sa clarification na binigay kay Chairman Dax dun sa issues on the GEF, no, dun sa Growth Equalization Fund. So maybe ang hihingi na lang namin kay Director Aris in the future is malaman rin yung basis ng computation ng GEF, makonsulta yung mga provincial governments on how we are going to allocate or what the basis for the allocation is. And yung sa issue po dun sa ano po ang madedevolve po na services, I think very critical kasi sinabi nyo na rin po at sinabi na rin ni Governor Evardone kanina, parang siguro ang fear ng local governments na we are going to be responsible now for services way beyond than what we are receiving. So ang daming services na madidevolve sa amin. Kung titignan niyo po yung computation nyo, ang madidevolve po na budget sa amin will be about 1 trillion plus, which is still about just about 20 to 25%. 20 to 25% lang po ng national budget. So the bulk of the national budget is still going to be with the national government agencies. So kung yung bulk, yung 3/4 ng budget national government agencies pa rin, kailangan i-measure natin kung commensurate yung dina-download sa amin na funds is against the responsibilities. So this one, Director Aris, Secretary Boss Wendell, very critical ho malaman kung ano talaga yung binababa sa amin. Kasi like tinitignan ko yung slide nyo kanina, like sa agriculture, ang nakasulat doon, extension services lang ang dinidevolve nyo. So, yung mga operating functions sa mga agencies, ang dami ho nun eh. Kasi yung National Rice Program lang ngayon at saka yung RCEP, kanina ibababa yung program na yon. So yung that alone is already close to 20 billion. And we don't see the national agency that they should be doing that. Dapat talaga ang responsibility niyan yung mga governors and yung mga mayors rin, especially sa commodity outputs and commodity targets. Tapos dun ho sa sa slide nyo kanina, Director Aris, nakasulat doon na sa hospitals, facilities and services are going to be downloaded to us already. So that's a very critical function that we'd like to know more about. So I guess to cap it off lang po, we really need to know kung ano yung i-devolve sa amin. It has to be very clear. Tapos pwede bang while you are there right now, hingin ko lang yung position ng DBM tsaka ng DOH na I think nandito rin naman sila. Ano bang positioning natin sa renationalization sa mga hospitals? Kasi bakit sa Congress continuous ang support? Pag tinatanong ang DOH, they continually support renationalization of hospitals. Kung gagawin yon at popondohan naman ng national, well, ako from the point of Bohol, no, as governor, wala akong problema doon kung yun ang gustong gawin, no? Especially kung imo-modernize yung mga hospital. Pero kung hindi naman, dapat sabihin rin and put your foot down na this is not part of the directions of the national government. So, pwede ho bang itanong yon pointedly na ano ba yung positioning natin, sir, sa renationalization ng mga hospitals?
Okay. Mr. President, can we respond?
Yes, please, Sec Wendell. Go ahead, please.
On the first question, Gobart, malinaw na sinabi ko na kanina na kung ano yung nakasaad sa Section 17 of the Local Government Code, yun yung bulto ng mga functions na ililipat na from the national to the local. And you mentioned about agriculture at sabi mo extension services. We'll try to look into this matter some more dahil pagdating kasi sa ibang programs and services being conducted by the national, merong mga kaukulang batas din kasi yan eh. Kaya hindi natin po pwedeng i-transfer yan dahil covered sila ng separate law. So we'll have to also respect that unless the law itself is amended or revised. Pagdating naman dun sa position namin on the renationalization of hospitals, di hayag na magiging repugnant yan dun sa devolution. Kaya nga nilocalize yan, tapos hina-nationalize naman. Yun yung isa din na kailangan tingnan namin from our end here at the national vis-a-vis ano ba din talaga ang official na posisyon ng Department of Health dyan, Mr. President.
Thank you, Sec Wendell. I think, are you done?
Sir, isang follow-up lang. So nagpapasalamat
Follow-up
po ako
question.
dun sa...
Go ahead, go Bart. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. So salamat po dun sa sagot ni Secretary Wendell na hihintayin at kukunin, but maganda rin na sinabi niya na repugnant to devolution yung issue ng nationalization. Kasi kami, nagugulat ako because we get bills, no, left and right asking for our opinion, and coming out of Congress sa mga committee hearings, sa mga committee resolutions, hindi Gob, di mo barog ba ang DOH, they do not stand on the position. So hindi namin alam kung saan tayo papunta. So ano ba, talagang magde-devolve ba tayo o hindi? We just want to know kasi kailangan rin naming paghandaan. So thank you very much for that. Last na lang po yung sa section 9 po, dun sa proposed executive order na pinresent na slide ni Director Aris. Sana yung masama naman talaga yung RDC plans, yung mga proposed and approved. Kasi sa Region 7 po, hindi ko po alam yung experience sa ibang mga RTCs. Pinaghihirapan po namin yung mga Regional Development Council plans and programs na pinapa-approve at pinaghahandaan ng mga provincial development councils. Pero as of today, at least sa amin sa Region 7 po, hindi po lumalampas ng 20%. I think 17% lang yung mga priorities ng mga provinces ang nike-carry doon po sa NEP. So parang ang mood namin sa Region 7, sa RDC namin, bakit pa paghihirapan yung mga Provincial Development Council plans and approval sa RDC kung sa NEP na lumalabas, hindi naman who carried. So sana that should be specifically tackled and specifically that should be addressed dun sa EO sa pag-include ng mga priorities po ng mga provinces sa budget natin. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, Mr. President. Salamat po.
Thanks, Gob Art. Si Gob Abet would like to ask a question, Gob Abet Garcia. And then we go to Gob Mandanas later. Go ahead, Gob Abet. I am sorry, Sec Wendell would like to answer the query of Gob Art. Sorry ho. Baka you want to say give a comment on that.
Well, Mr. President, kami naman, tinatanggap namin lahat yung mga views and opinions as well as positions of the members of the League. Makakaasa si Governor Art na pag-uusapan namin yan. Matter of fact, kahit doon sa budget call namin, sinasabi namin lahat dapat talaga dumaan sa RDC. Datapat, pagdating din kasi sa sharing ng mga budget ceilings, siyempre hanggang kung saan lang po pwedeng ma-accommodate yung mga projects, hanggang doon lang din kasi naman talaga dahil hindi naman natin ma-stretch pa yung budget ng bawat departments. Lalo pa ngayon, wala nang nakikita ko wala nang local infrastructure program ngayon dahil lahat ng mga locally generated list of projects that are being sent up to the national, ibabalik na sa local yan kasi magiging local na nga At maliwanag din doon sa budget calls namin na sinasabihan na namin lahat ng mga ahensya na kung ano yung mga serbisyo na dapat nasa lokal na, wag na nilang isali sa kanilang budget proposals dahil hindi na po makukonsider yon. Dahil we need to respect precisely and give dignity to the decision of the Supreme Court. Kaya po makakaasa po kayo, Gov Art, na hanggat maaari kung po pwedeng paano ang sistema ng pag-allocate talaga ng pondo na yan. But let me assure you na mahigpit po kami pagdating sa requirement na yan na kailangan may certification na yung mga projects na gustong papuntuhan sa national ay talaga namang dumaan sa RDC for the required process, documentation, and endorsement.
Salamat po, Secretary.
Thanks, Gob Art. Thanks, Sec Wendell. We now go to Gob Abet Garcia, please. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, Gov Velasco. Good morning to my colleagues and good morning to the whole DBM family headed by Secretary Wendell. Before I go to my main question, unang question lang po, clarificatory. Narinig ko kanina meron tayong equalization fund. But as I understand, dun sa ating formula, kung paano natatanggap yung amount ng mga LGU from the then era, ay based on population, land area, and equal sharing. So, aside from equal sharing, meron pa pong equalization fund na pwedeng matanggap po yung mga LGU. Tama po ba yun, Mr. Secretary?
Yung pagkaalam ko, under the local government code, it's land area, income, and population. Walang equal sharing doon.
Meron. Meron, di ba?
Meron. Sorry.
Meron,
I stand corrected. But what I'm saying lamang is, ang naging punto kasi dito, lumalabas na despite the fact na magkakaroon na nga sila ng additional tira, ay kukulangin pa rin yung pondo. Kaya napag-isipan yung kung pwedeng magsagawa ng aksyon at ilalagak sa General Appropriation Act yung item na yan on Growth Equalization Fund na hindi naman yan kukunin doon sa kabuuan ng share ninyo na isinaad ng Korte Suprema.
Okay. So sa labas ho yun ng share sa national taxes ng mga
Ay, opo.
LGUs.
Ay,
Okay.
opo.
Okay. Tapos yung main question ko po, alam niyo po si then Governor Tet Garcia yung nag-file ng petition together with Governor Mandanas ay father ko po. And
Opo.
I'm sure gusto niya pong tanungin tong question na ito dahil as an accountant, si GovTet ay mahilig siya sa kwentas claras. So, I'm sure gusto rin malaman ng fellow governors ko po. Yung, since national taxes na po ngayon, ang basis ng share ng mga LGUs, 40% of which, pwede po bang, for the sake of transparency and clarity, pwede po bang magkaroon ng breakdown yung league doon sa amount ng sources ng national taxes and amounts para malinaw po yung computation ng 23% share ng provinces and yung mga percentage din po na share ng ibang LGUs. So yung BIR correction, customs collection, and other national taxes, kung pwede rin lang po kami mabigyan ng copy nung breakdown para ho yung amount malinaw moving forward.
Salamat po sa tanong. At ako, I agree with you na dapat talaga quintus claras. Lamang, we will not be in a position to do that, Gobabit, because it is the Department of Finance that has the complete records of the collections. So we will elevate to them this concern para po, sabi mo nga, quintus claras, kung talaga niya nang tatanggapin namin, saan ba nagmula yan at ano bang naging combination niya at umabot tayo sa ganyang sharings na. So papaabot po namin sa Department of Finance, Gobabit.
Maraming salamat po, Sec Wendell.
Okay. Is Gov Dodo Mandanas around? Gov Dodo, okay, it's your turn. We recognize you. Go ahead.
Number one, I was going to ask questions, but I think the questions were already asked. And so I would just want to comment that I subscribe and I agree with the answers given and the information and clarification given by our Secretary, Wendell, supported, of course, by Director Aris, on the presentation that, you know, the basic concept that really the services, the basic services were really devolved under the local government code, section 17. So they were already devolved. It was just the money that has been, the whole share to fund the devolution was the only one that was withheld until the Supreme Court decision. So, and this the Supreme Court decision, all the figures are being taken. It's really just the amount. There is no talk about, there should not be any talk about use of funds, services, because that is already clearly mentioned. That it should be really up to the local governments. That this is devolution of funds only. The services, they were already devolved, as a matter of fact. So what will happen is that starting 2022, those services which were devolved but were continually being done or performed or delivered by the national government, starting 2022, they will just simply stop. They will simply stop. So, to the extent that was mentioned to us, depending upon the budget. And then also with regard to the question of the computation, well, it's in the Supreme Court decision that really that function was decided by the Supreme Court, and it was the Bureau of Customs and the Bureau of Internal Revenue were really the one who were supposed to give those figures, not the DBM. Secretary Wendell was also correct there. So it's really under the Secretary of Finance. And also this thing of the Equalization Growth Fund, it's also appropriate that it really would come from the general fund, because you cannot withhold anything from the share of the national government. So I just want to mention that and to thank the Secretary for the correct answer and clarification. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Gov Dodo. I would like to
Thank you.
recognize Gov JJ of Camiguin. Go ahead. Gov JJ.
Mr. President, gusto ko magpasalamat kay Governor.
I'm sorry, Sec Wendell. Please go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Governor Dodo. You said it right. Tsaka kaanib niyo po ako dahil local din po ako eh.
At saka pareho tayong
Kaya
CPA.
ang heart ko talaga nasa local.
I know. At pareho rin tayong CPA, so marunong din tayong magkwenta.
Hindi, abogado lang ako. Abogado lang po ako. Salamat po, Governor Dodo.
Thank you po, Gov Wendell. We now recognize Gov JJ of Camiguin. Go ahead, Gov JJ.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Secretary Wendell. Maayong buntag. I will just reserve my questions in the next time, Mr. President, because I'm just clarifying with my finance staff and department heads regarding that was discussed by DBM Region 10 with the budget officers. So I'll just clarify, Mr. President, Secretary, pag okay na po, then I'll just ask questions directly to the Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Gov JJ. Sec Wendell, may I be allowed to ask some questions? These are questions given to us by some of our members. One question is, what is national government planning to do with the ongoing local programs and projects, particularly local infrastructure programs and projects, once the devolution shall have been implemented? What is the plan in managing the transition process with respect to ongoing construction and rehabilitation works on local infrastructure? The suggestion is this project should first be completed before turning over the infrastructure to LGUs. So what's your comment on this?
Yes, ganito yan, Mr. President. We are planning under the committee's plan to hold dialogues between the NGAs and the LGUs through the leagues to foster a much better and deeper understanding of the transition plans, discuss issues, challenges, and even the matter of how projects are going to be implemented, and hopefully reach a common stand on all of these issues. The growth, yeah, that is my response, Mr. President.
Okay. Well, another comment on that is that they're proposing that all infrastructure and non-infrastructure infrastructure projects that have been authorized budgets under the NEP and GAA that are scheduled or programmed for implementation prior to the effectivity of the devolution EO be implemented and completed as programmed and budgeted for and turned over to the LGU. So,
Yeah.
Is the same?
Precisely, that will form part of the discussions
Okay.
during the dialogues, Mr. President.
Okay. Another query, Mr. Sec, is how much is the national government currently spending budget versus utilization on the bold functions and the corresponding levels of public goods and services delivery associated with these expenditures by level of government, local government unit? How much is spent budget versus utilization on production and delivery of public goods and services? And how much is spent on the operation of the regional and field offices, as well as the regional coordination offices that oversee the performance of functions that are to be devolved?
With the enormity of the issues raised in the question, I beg that we be given time to answer that because that requires a much deeper review and analysis of all of this data, Mr. President. And just as soon as all of these are sent up to us, we will, in writing, respond to this because we'll have to dig up our records. Matter of fact, on a monthly or quarterly basis, we require all national government agencies to submit to us a statement of appropriation, allotment, obligation, disbursement, and balances, no? And so that would require a lot of precisely review and analysis. So I beg that we be given time to respond, but we really request that this will all be sent to us so we can properly answer them, Mr. President.
Thank you po, Sec. We will just communicate accordingly on that. Then another query, Section 2, Paragraph 3 of the draft EO says that some functions will be shared with the national government pursuant to other laws. Well, sharing assumes that there is an agreement by the parties, NG and LGUs, that such functions are to be shared between the national government and the local government units rather than just a unilateral decision of the national government. How will the sharing of these functions be implemented? What principles and parameters does the national government propose to guide the determination of who will produce the public good or service, who will deliver them to target communities, and who will finance? Ayun po ang query.
Well, masyadong malalim din yung katanungan na yan. But just the same, there's a mechanism already in place with respect to national and local government coordination and cooperation in terms of project implementation. And this is where national government agencies enter into a memorandum of agreement with local governments in the implementation of projects. Suffice it to say that that's why I said earlier that unless specific laws are amended so that it's not just going to be the national government through its agencies that will implement it, then why not? Because that will make the work easier and faster. But right now, in terms of, for example, the issues raised earlier by Governor Art with respect to the Agricultural Modernization Act, the funds there that are realized have already been earmarked to specific departments. And therefore, we cannot just devolve that without having the law first amended. And so as the other laws for that matter. But again, I say we are in agreement that even this can be done. If it can be done, why not?
Thank you for that, Mr. Secretary. Another point raised is that it is proposed that the EO should consider the autonomy of the LGUs. And some are saying we can possibly delete provisions that will direct LGUs to perform certain tasks, comply with the implementation rules set by national government, or require them to submit plans for approval by the national government. Para hong binibigyan ng leeway or more power ang local government units para to craft their own mga rules and policies and projects. So parang ito yung when you devolve certain functions, also give the local government units ample powers to really set the direction for their respective political territories. Kasi we have to consider the fact that these governments have their own unique and particular situations and circumstances. So yun ho sana ang what is being proposed that be integrated in the EO.
Yung po maliwanag po, Mr. President, binanggit na nga po kanina na ni Governor Dodo na wala namang anong tawag nito, kinukuha or aangkinin pa ang national pagdating sa devolved functions dahil ito nakasaad na talaga under Section 17 eh. Ang kulang na nga lang po ay yung pundo. Kaya nga po, pag-implement po niyan, hindi man pwede makialam ang national kasi nga local autonomy na tayo eh, no? Unless yan ay talagang national project yan over which it's the national interest that's being talked about. So therefore merong mga corresponding naman na provisions to that effect. But otherwise po, kung ang pag-uusapan talaga ay itong ating kinakaharap na challenge na pag-implement nito, ay hindi po makikialam at wala pong a-approve ng national dyan dahil po local lang po talaga yan. Kayo po ang mag-decide po niyan po.
One last point, Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry we are taking much of your precious time. Ito hong EO has not yet been approved and released officially. And yet, it appears that itong aming, we are working now on our AIP, yung budget namin, and things like that. And then we already complied with certain requirements regarding the submission of our projects, local projects, no? So, parang we are already implementing the devolution proper, no? When the EO has not yet been released, and I find that there are certain things to be done before we can really implement fully the devolution. Ang dami hong issues na nakalabas, no? So, would it be possible that baka we defer muna itong devolution na ito sa 2022, considering that there are many issues to be threshed out? And para maganda ho yung lalabasan nitong devolution because, we are really quite happy that the functions under Section 17 will be devolved finally. Pero sabi nga natin, hindi ho magagawa kaagad in a short time eh. Baka maraming issues. So, baka we can defer or baka phase 2 yung devolution. Kasi the fear of some LCEs is that bigla hong ibabagsak yung devolved functions which are quite many and then they are not ready with it, no? That's one thing. Yung capacity building, wala pa ho. Capacity development, medyo mabigat ho yun eh. More particularly with respect to the lower rank LGUs. Talaga hong mahihirapan ho yan because as of now, we are having difficulty getting good people just to handle certain positions there, functions in the local government. How much more ho pag biglang binabalahat itong devolved functions na ito, and we are not experienced in this. And we project that we will have a difficulty in getting the competent people that will implement it, who will implement it. So parang malapit na ho, and then it will just be implemented abruptly and suddenly. So there's quite a big apprehension on this eh. Baka ho gradual because baka lalo hong sumama yung rendition ng services tsaka functions. Baka ho mag-suffer yung affected din ho kasi yung national projects and programs natin dyan eh, hindi ho ba? There are so many functions here that will be devolved which are intertwined with the national goals and mga sustainable development goals ho natin. Kaya baka ho, I don't know, we submit to your best discretion But yun na nga ho, there is much fear na baka it cannot just be handled right away by the local government units. Baka yun muna ho ito, we keep on preparing the people there sa LGUs, yung the LGU itself, and then yun din ho, yung devolution talaga. Maraming affected ho eh. I came to know of some regional officials that are raising some concerns, no? Because uh, eventually abolish po yung kanilang regional offices daw ho. Although there are options which they can avail of, pero still they're much affected. And there's little time na ho eh. Ano ho kaya yung maganda dyan? Baka we can defer, we can start preparing already for this, yung mga devolution transition plan from the LGU, sa national agencies. Pero we start working on it because we cannot probably just do it in one sitting and then so sudden. Ano ho kaya mabuti, Sec Wendell?
I agree po with you in a way that, you know, iba-ibang level nga po yung apprehensions natin. Sa amin po sa national, ganun din po dahil lahat ng po ng mga agencies and departments are being required to prepare and submit the respective transition devolution plans. And by this time, after this meeting, kayo din po, you also start alerting your own people to start crafting the devolution transition plan in anticipation of the greater role that the local governments will be doing next year. But again, hindi naman po itong maging katapusan ng dialogue natin. Kami po, we are ready to sit down with you on how much more can be done para lang smoother ang transition natin when it comes to full implementation of the Supreme Court decision. Ang amin lang po, we are guided, and just as we have agreed with you na ang talagang implementation ay 2022 na, kaya naman po sinusunod din po talaga namin yan. Ayaw namin tumalikod dyan dahil nga ang gusto niya nga po sana kung maaga pa yung implementation, pero naapektuhan nga po tayo nitong kasalukuyang sitwasyon natin. But kami naman po, we're ready to implement and do justice to the decision that you have made with respect to this. At basta po kami, nakahanda kami anytime. Lagi po kami handa kung ano po pwede natin panggawin para lang po maiayos natin ang pag-implement ng decision po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Sec Wendell.
Mr. President?
Sino yun? Si Gob Dodo?
Yes, Mr. President, Governor
Sige,
Dodo
Gob Dodo, you're
Just-
recognized. Go ahead.
Just a clarification, Mr. President, dun sa point ninyo with regard to postponing the devolution of services. Point of clarification lang po, Mr. President. I think what we are talking about really is full devolution of the entire amount that should be going to us. Doon po sa devolution of services, wala pong bagong i-devolve na services sa atin that we might be overcome. This responsibility po on those services were really devolved with the implementation of the local government code in 1992, January. I-devolve na po sa atin yon. I-devolve na po. Ang hindi po i-devolve ay yung pera, yung the entire amount. Kaya nga, that is the Supreme Court decision po ngayon. That now, ang i-devolve lang po sa atin ngayon would be the funds in accordance with the clarified provision of the Constitution, clarified by the Supreme Court decision. So, tayo po, hindi po i-devolve sa atin yung mga projects na ginagawa nila. When you talk about projects ngayon, on the local level, itutuloy po yon because they've already been budgeted. So ang pinag-uusapan po lang dito na talagang ididibot, pera lang po. Yung pong responsibility, yung trabaho na up to now ginagawa nila, that they should not have, dahil nasa kanilang pera, ititigil na lang nila. Ititigil na lang nila yung, tatapusin na lang nila because it's covered already by the budget. So, yung pong postponing, hindi po naman, wala po naman silang dinadagdag. In other words, na additional responsibility or basic service. Ang dinadagdagan lang po ay yung pondo na napunta sa atin. Yun po. Kaya ang nangangailangan po ng time, as Secretary Wendell mentioned, would be ang national government. Dahil mababawasan po yung pondo nila ng national government. Pag nabawasan yon, then the their projects will be the ones that will be affected. Their people will be the ones affected. Their capital expenditure, their MOE, they will be the ones affected. That's why ngayon pa lang, ginagawa na nila. That's why kailangan po talaga yung executive order ipaganap na ngayon. I'm just trying to express my view. Salamat po.
Thank you, Gov. Dodo. Would you care to answer this, make a comment on this as Sec Wendell, or? Go ahead, Sec Wendell. Nakamute po kayo.
Yes, Mr. President, I agree with Governor Dodo 101%.
Okay. Although there may be other opinions on that, but we'll hear Governor Otik Riano po for some questions. Opo.
Okay, magandang tanghali kay Secretary Wendell at sa mga naka-on board na mga gobernador at ibang mga speakers, no. Makiki-updates lang po Secretary Wendell tungkol sa PRDP project, no. Yung 2021 kasi ang province po in Romblon ay naghanda po kami ng counterpart for 2021. So mayroon po bang part 2 na marirelease na budget for 2021 o for 2022 na po? Yung sa PRDP project po.
Yung provincial road projects yan, Gov, no?
Yes po. PRDP.
For this year kasi wala tayong punto na dyan for PRDP. And how much more kung sa 2022 with the Mandanas ruling, siyempre pagka provincial roads, cargo na yan cargo na ng province yan. Opo, Gov.
Yung CMGP po mayroon tayo for 2021, Sec.
Wala din tayong CMDP na yung conditional kasi nga po nilipat po natin dun sa NTF-LCAC na project. Opo.
Saka yung PRDP ay by 2022 na rin po. May budget.
Wala na nga po kasi much of the local PAPs na ginagawa ngayon ng mga national agencies, except for some, because by nature and character, national talaga siya, ay ililipat na po yung pondo. Hindi po yung function. Yung function po nandun na sa Section 17 yun. Ang pondo na lang ang ililipat po sa inyo para po ma-implement yung functions ninyo specified under Section 17 of the local government code.
By 2021 counterpart. Okay, maraming salamat, Secretary.
Okay. May I ask a question, Sec Wendell, in relation to PRDP? Because there is a proposed loan with the World Bank, no, worth I think around 2 billion, and there be another grant coming from EU, no? But we're requesting for a budget cover of 250 million from you. because our province of Marinduque will be affected by the absence of a budget cover. We badly need that. Otherwise, the World Bank loan, I think in the amount of around 2 billion plus an EU loan, a grant rather, will not be implemented this year if we will not provide the budget cover. Pwede ba ho natin bigyan ng budget cover yan? Na
Kung
250 million
yes,
only?
yes, Gob. Kung program loan po yan, Gob, that is assured kasi may sovereign guarantee tayo dyan eh. So kung ano po yung nakaakibat ng mga projects dyan, kailangan susuportahan talaga ng gobyerno yan dahil program loan po yan, Gob. Huwag po kayo mag-alala. Opo.
So, magandang balita po yun. Anyway, wala na ba hong tanong na iba? Actually, Sec,
Wala pa lang, Mr. President.
who is that?
Governor Mamba.
Gob Mamba. Sige, go ahead. Gob Mamba.
Again, good afternoon po sa atin lahat, especially kay Secretary Wendell. We will be preparing our budget already. Kailan ho namin makukuha yung exact ERA figures ng bawat province so that we could also start preparing our budget for 2022?
You say, Laura, are you there? Laura?
Sir, si Director Aris is preparing the local budget circular.
Okay. Yan, Governor.
Sir, if I may, sir.
Director Aris?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much po, sir. Sir, so far we have yet to receive the certification from the Bureau of Customs, although we already have received the certification coming from the Bureau of Revenue. And we expect po to release the tentative ERA shares of local government units for 2022 in May or June of this year. So that's what we do po every year. So we are always ahead of schedule.
Okay, Gob Mamba, are you satisfied with the answer?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat po, Gob Mamba. Sec Wendell, two more points. It has been observed, and I don't know if this is accurate, that you will be giving to the LGUs 234 billion, no? But somebody estimated that the total amount corresponding to the devolved functions will amount to something like 270 to 280 billion. So yung mga ibang LGUs, they have apprehensions that what will be given to us by reason of the Mandanas-Garcia ruling will only be 234 billion, but what will actually be downloaded to us will be somewhere between 270 to 280 billion. So ang sinasabi ho nila, we were expecting that the 234 billion will be given to the LGUs and they will be the ones to decide on how they can make use of their additional ERA as a result of the Mandanas-Garcia ruling. So, para hong na-dampen yung kanilang na-disappoint sila na itatapat pala ho yung pondo na yon dito sa mga devolved functions. They were expecting that yung share nila dito sa 234 billion magagamit nila to more particularly how to revive the economy in the respective political territories, and so they can also put funds doon sa mga major projects and mga programs. So wala pala hong magagamit and then deficit pa ho. So yun ho ang concern because they believe that kailangan ho kasama ho sa kanila yun yung additional ERA na yun. And that the national government should set aside a certain amount from the remaining balance from the funds of the national government. So kinuha yung 40%, we were able to come up with a victory there sa Mandanas versus Garcia ruling, and they were expecting that the additional ERA will be used by them at their discretion and that they can make use of this for their major projects. So ano ho ba yung ganong ano, so we can explain to them very well how this will come out to be. Para hong kumbaga ano empty victory ho daw sabi nila. Wala rin hong paggagamitan. When they feel na with the share that they will get this additional era as a result of the Ochoa ruling, they can push forward itong mga projects nila at programs, talagang their respective political territories will be developed right away at magiging progressive. Paano ho kaya yung ganyan? Can we be clarified on that para maikwento naman namin doon sa ibang governors po namin?
Sige po, Gob. Mr. President, again, ang pagbabasihan natin ng lahat ng ito ay ano baga ang talagang functions ng local governments. At yan, isinasaad under Section 17. No? Ngayon, kung functions, wala na ho kailangang i-devolve kasi nandyan na sa inyo. Ang kailangan na lang i-devolve yung dagdag na pondo para magawa ninyo lahat yan. Yung mga functions ninyo under the local government code. Kinula nga po dahil ang binibigay lang ay yung income lang or revenues derived from the internal revenues. Ngayon, dinagdag na nga po yung customs. Pagdating naman po sa paggastos niyan o pag-allocate niyan o pag-utilize niyan, wala naman din pong pakialam ng national dyan. Kayo po ang higit na nakakaalam at kayo po magmamando, kayo po magde-decide kung paano nyo gagastusin yan. Now, if on top of that, mag-allocate pa ang national for additional funds para magawa ninyo kung ano yung gusto niyo gawin pa, wala naman po tayong pagbabasihan na nga po. Dahil maliwanag naman kung saan yung magiging source ng national na pagpaparti-partihan ng national at saka local governments. So, nasa sa inyo na po yun. Paano nyo pong gagastusin yung idadagdag sa inyo. Subalit wala pong makikialam na at hindi na mo magkikialam ang national pagdating sa utilization ng additional era dahil nga lumaki na ang share ninyo panggaling doon sa income or revenues or customs duties derived by the Bureau of Customs. So, hanggang doon lang po talaga ang po pwede nang gawin ng national at this point in time. Except, of course, for other projects mandated by existing laws over which meron naman din pong involvement ng mga local dahil kung national ang mag-i-implement talagang sa kabuuan yan. Except kung program flow niyan na specific lang din to a class of local government units base sa terms and conditions nung pinagkautangan natin. But then again, I say na mas marami din pong mga opportunities pa na pwede natin mapag-usapan precisely on ensuring that there's going to be a smooth implementation of the ruling po. And ito gusto lang din namin ma-clarify na yung Growth Equalization Fund hindi po para sa lahat yun. Para lang po yun sa mga nangangailangan ng mga LGUs. Kasi i-equalize lang natin yung opportunity nila for growth as compared to yung talagang mas nakakalamang ng mga LGUs. Para din makapacitate sila to do more than what they're usually doing only. And this is on top of the national tax allocation. Hindi po ito ibabawas doon sa shares ninyo. At bagkos, kayo din po magde-decide ng national tax allocation ninyo. Wala pong pakialam ang national government dyan. At ang sinasabi lang namin na yung mga usual na ginagawa pa ng national government agencies dahil nga sa decision ay ibababa na yung pera sa inyo. Hindi na po national ang hahawak niyan. Kayo na po mag-decide kung paano yung gagastusin yung pera. At mag-i-issue din po ang resolution ang Development Budget Coordination Committee with respect to the national tax allocation formula at bibigyan po namin kayo ng kopya para lang po malaman niya sa question kung magkano ba talaga ang mapupunta sa bawat probinsya. Dahil po yan, pag-uusapan po ng kabuuan ng Development Budget Coordination Committee. And in due time, we will provide you with all the information that you need. Na-mention lang, very quickly lang, Gob, na-mention lang yung PRDP. With us is Undersecretary Iringan of the ALG, if you're around. Pwede mo bang kasi this is a World Bank project, Undersecretary?
Yes, sir. Magandang tanghali po sa ating lahat, kay President Governor Velasco, sir, and to all the honorable governors we have. Of course, to Secretary Abisado, DPM, and other undersecretaries. Kasama po natin ngayon, naka-online din po ang aming OIC Secretary, si Undersecretary Bernardo Florese. Yung pong PRDP, sa pagkakaalam ko po, ito po yung isang flagship program ng Department of Agriculture. At yun na nga po, may counterpart ang provincial governments at even ang national government. But we really do not know, sir, Secretary Abisado, if it will still push through for 2021. But what I know talaga is there is a counterpart coming from the provincial governments. But in so far as the program is concerned, I think this is a very big help to all our provincial governments. No? Dahil katuwang nito, kasama nito yung CMGP na pinapatupad natin ng mga nakaraang mga taon, ay nakaka-contribute ito sa pag-improve at pag-rehabilitate ng mga provincial roads in the different provinces. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Direk Mario Iringan. And
Mr. President.
Yeah, sige, a few minutes more.
Governor Dodo po. Maraming salamat, Mr. President. I just would like to add clarification dun sa first, yung inyong question na regarding na ang impression po ng ibang local government is we had a hallowed victory sa Supreme Court. Hindi po totoo yon. Hindi po totoo yon. Talaga pong napakalaking misunderstanding that needs clarification. Dahil uulitin ko po, ang i-devolve po ngayon ay pera. Alam mo ba, yung 243, sa example na ibinigay, ibibigay po sa atin yon na walang kolatilya. Ano? Ang ibig sabihin po, yung sinasabi na services na 273 billion, hindi po ipapasa sa atin ang mga project na yon. Hindi po ipapasa. Hindi na po ipapasa yon. Ang ipapasa lang sa atin po, pera. Pondo lang. At paano natin gagamitin yon? Kapares po ng sinabi ni Secretary Wendell, susunod lang po tayo sa Supreme Court, sa Section 17 ng Local Government Code. Na yun po ay pinagaganap na. Kaya tayo po ang gagamit noon. Hindi po kukunin natin yung projects na pinagkakagastusan ngayon ng 273. Yung po 273, kaya po lang napalagay yun doon, that is para po gamit yon ng national government kung saan nila kukunin yung pera. Pero yung project na pinagagamitan ng pera ngayon, yung project po hindi po ipagagawa sa atin. Yung mga taong gumagawa ngayon doon, hindi po ipapasa sa atin na tayong magbayad sa kanila. Basta bibigay lang po ang pera. Yun lang po ang clarification. Yun po ang Secretary Wendell, tama po ba ako?
Medyo nag-time out si Secretary Wendell. Thank you, Dodo, for your comment.
Yung po lang ang clarification.
Salamat, Gov. Dodo. In the meantime, ayun na pala si Secretary Wendell. Yun lang po, merong comment si Gov. Dodo to the effect na yung pondo lang naman daw ho ang binababa at hindi na talaga yung functions kasi naka-indicate na raw sa Section 17. Anyway, Sec. Wendell, maraming salamat ho talaga because si Yusek Bernie Torresi po ay matagal na po nag-iintay. And we will just communicate with you yung other concerns with regard to devolution. Yung sana ho lang isang request, sana laki-lakihan ho yung growth, ano yan,
Equalization fund.
yung equalization fund, no? Para medyo ma-soften lang yung effect sa finances ng local government. Pero we will communicate with you in writing ho, yung mga ibang concerns ho. At thank you very much po.
Maraming salamat po.
Sige po, maraming salamat po. O sige po, thank you po at keep safe and God bless you po. Thank you po.
Same to you po. Salamat po.
We will now recognize Yusek Bernie Torresi. I'm sorry, Yusek. Humaba ho yung time with the other resource speakers. May we recognize you now?
Thank you very much, Governor Velasco, the President of the League of Governors. Masaya na medyo nag-intermittent din yung yung internet ko. But I was somehow able to catch some of the discussions earlier. And with me are, I think Yusek Dancing is on board, as well as the Undersecretary for Local Government, the OIC Marlo Iringan, who could clarify matters on some details about the Mandanas Garcia ruling. And mine will just be a message of support. But I'd like to congratulate and thank Governor Velasco for initiating this meeting. We already have a series of meetings. The last time was initiated by ULAP to Governor Kua, and we met some experts from UP Academy. And so we have been discussing this thoroughly. Even within the department, we have been preparing for this. I know this is not just a simple of transferring the funds, but we have to identify the problems, and we have to give the leeway to the LGUs to have their own programs. So we will just be giving our general guidelines. So I'd like to thank also the different governors for attending this meeting, and let me take this opportunity to express our appreciation and gratitude to all of you for your hard work, especially in the past year that we have the pandemic. Our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic has been a grueling one, but I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. And as we were able to overcome the challenges posed by our unseen enemy. And indeed, we would have not reached this far if not for your respective contributions. But to finish this protracted battle for public health, we must remain coordinated and sync until the end. And this is why we seek your commitment to ensure the success of our COVID-19 vaccination program and help boost our climate back to normality by steering economic activities in your respective provinces. And I'd like to relay the message of the President last time during our cabinet meeting that he is thanking especially the governors and the different LGUs who entered into tripartite agreement with the manufacturers of vaccines. That would be really a great help to the national government. So on your own, you have been procuring vaccines for your constituents, and we thank you. We thank you for that. And just to relay the message of the president. So our dear governors and fellow officials, we are here to address some pressing matters that concern and affect our countrymen. Earlier, you were discussing about IATF resolution number 101, and that was a product of actually the dialogue between the ALG and the different leagues through the ULAP, and I think all the leagues were represented there. Although I was not able to attend that meeting, but USEC Evidencing was there, and this is the consensus that we already removed the travel authority being issued by the PNP. After all, the PNP is not keen on continuing it kasi sa araw-araw na ginagawa millions yung ginagawa nilang travel authority. So we discarded that to include the medical certificate as a requirement of issuing the travel authority. But what was left is the testing, if ever the LGUs will require it. No? But this is not automatic. Nagkaroon ng misinterpretation dun sa 101 dahil kahit yung mga dating hindi nagre-require ng RT-PCR ay nagre-require na ngayon. So we would be issuing another advisory just to clarify that. It's not a matter of not for the sake of just getting the RT-PCR, but it should only be required when it is necessary. So tama si Governor Velasco kanina, as a general rule, there should be no test. And now, unless of course the LGU will require it. Nagkakaroon lang kasi ng kalituhan because even those na hindi naman dapat, for example, yung mga transit points na mangangailangan pa ng RT-PCR, ay dadaan lang naman dun sa port na yon. So parang hindi rin siya convenient to the travelers. That the reason why we are removing those travel restrictions is to ease up, no, and then open up slowly our economy. Now, instead of this, the DOST has, as mentioned earlier, has developed the S-Pass, which would probably replace the travel requirements. And ang maganda nito, and we were able to discuss this yesterday or last night during the IATF, because this will help the LGUs monitor the travel of their constituents and their visitors. So parang maganda yung monitoring, and this is separate from the multi-SIS developed contact tracing app, which is Stay Safe. So separate din ito. So somehow this would replace the travel requirements. Yung nabanggit kanina, some LGUs are requiring antigen or just RDT. For me, it's fine, but and it was also discussed by the IATF, but the DOH still insisted on using RT-PCR because that is the gold standard. Accordingly, the antigen is only used when there is outbreak, kasi mabilis makuha yung result. So that is, according to them, the use of antigen. Of course, yung RDT o yung test lang na RDT, hindi rin siya masyadong reliable. So we still have to depend on the RT-PCR. That is according to DOH, and ito yung inadapt ng IATF. Now, yung nabanggit din kanina about the port of entry, mahirap din kasi. Of course, alam naman natin kung magkano ang gastos sa RT-PCR. If we will require everybody, mabuti lang kung congressman, kung businessmen ang mag-travel, then okay lang yun. They will shoulder the test or the RT-PCR test. But for ordinary travelers, mahirapan din kasi sa kanila. Lalo na yung passing through lang. Yung mga ordinary citizens na i-require natin kukuha ng RT-PCR, parang mahirapan sila. And so that is the reason why we need to justify why we are requiring RT-PCR. So yun naman ang kailangan namin i-clarify kasi nga nasabi ko kanina, almost everybody are already requiring RT-PCR. Mahirap din kasi kung lahat magre-require from the port of entry, for example. Okay lang yung papuntang Manila, but let us also be considerate because if for example in Metro Manila, we will also do that. Mahirapan din yung mga taga-probinsya. If we are going to require them RT-PCR from the origin, meaning kung ikaw galing sa probinsya pupunta ng Manila, if we will require you to get your RT-PCR, mahirapan din eh. And almost everybody are coming here in Manila. So parang ganun yung explanation kung bakit we have to be selective also and considerate in requiring RT-PCR. Now I also glanced at the program, and it states here that you will also be discussing the PCSO or the small town lottery. Actually, there was a letter given to us by PCSO, and that was just our action taken, because after all, we in the department only act on queries, and in this case the PCSO. But I'd like to emphasize that the department has no authority to declare invalid any ordinance or resolution of the local sanggunians. So we do not intend to remove this from our LGUs. We merely act on queries being brought to us by concerned agencies. But we have to consider also that we are with the executive branch of the government, including the local government units, and so we rely on for example the legal opinion of the DOJ in the absence of any court ruling on this. So we of course we respect the views of the governors, and we also have our own views on this, but we just rely on existing laws or policies on this, and that is what we are just trying to relay. For example, in Isabela, that is supposedly for Isabela, because I think there's a problem in the operations of STL in that area. But of course, we do not want to meddle on this. But yun nga, umihingi din naman ng tulong sa amin yung PCSO, because after all, this is a national government operations and program that we need to also to support. But I guess this was elevated to the League of Governors, and I appreciate that because even if it only involves Isabela, this might also affect other provinces. But as stated by Governor Velasco in his letter, we would not rather discuss this because we might be charged of sub judice. And so I'm not here to discuss that, but just to emphasize the point that we are just relying on the legal opinion of the DOJ. Nevertheless, we appreciate the move of the governor of Isabela in elevating it to the League of Governors, just to be able to discuss it thoroughly. But as I said, we would not belabor on this. We just have to rely on whatever available laws that we have, and we still respect the local autonomy of our LGUs, and we would rather defer to some rulings on this by the court. So that's how I intend to. That's about the small town lottery. I do not know. We do not want to side with anybody. We do not know also this AACs, but per our understanding, they are extension of PCSO, because PCSO cannot do this on their own. They cannot conduct lotteries on their own, so they need somebody to do the operations. So anyway, let me just continue. And you have been discussing the implementation of the Supreme Court's Mandanas Garcia, which will be implemented next year. And I'd like to congratulate, of course, Governor Velasco. This is already a success, not only to Governor Velasco and Governor Mandanas, but to all the governors and to the different LGUs. And this doctrine broadened the definition of the national government income eligible for distribution to local government units under the Internal Revenue Allotment. It clarified that ERA share of LGU should be coming from all national taxes collected and not just from the Bureau of Internal Revenue, and particularly, as mentioned by Governor or by Secretary Abisado, from the Bureau of Customs. Now, with the ruling in full swing next year in 2022, it is projected that LGUs will have over 25% increase, or as mentioned by ASEC John earlier, as high as 27% in the total ERA shares. This means that there will be more funding and opportunity for prosperity in all the provinces across the archipelago. But while enjoying a bigger share of tax collections starting next year, LGUs are also set to receive more public functions per the draft executive order on devolution. The upcoming EO aims to delineate the roles of the national and local governments to adjust to the projected jump in LGU's ERA shares. And as early as now, may I just encourage the LGUs to prepare their transition plans and improve their absorptive capacity, given the additional funding and functions brought by the landmark ruling and the upcoming executive order. We should now get to work to make this ruling not just a mere paper victory, but something that we can utilize to continue helping the people, especially during this time of pandemic. So my dear governors, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on how we can prepare for these developments and address their issues to better utilize them to usher the promised change to the Filipino people. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat at mabuhay tayong lahat. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Acting Secretary Florese. Thank you for recognizing our efforts in supporting national projects and programs, and that likewise with regard to our fight against the COVID-19. Rest assured that our LGUs will be in full support of the national programs and projects. No? But we go back to Reso 101. We are comfortable with respect to travelers by requiring them to just get a PCR test prior to arrival. No? I guess there's no issue on that. And we surmise that the travelers have the money to pay for it, no? And they can prepare for that requirement. What we're really requesting is that the LGU should be given the option of prescribing a test upon arrival, more particularly the antigen test, because many provinces do not have the molecular laboratory, and it's useless for them to avail or make use of the RT-PCR, because it's very expensive, and plus the fact that the waiting time is usually from 5 to 7 days before they come to know of the result. So it's more of, well, they have the option. Some LGUs have the molecular laboratory, so they can, we request that they be given the authority, but that's an option on them to make use of the PCR test upon arrival if they have the molecular laboratory. Now, the saliva test is out of the question already because we verified from Yusek Vega that is not yet given the accreditation by the DOH. So the only thing we can use is the antigen test, no? And that's what we are requesting. Of course, this is not a uniform rule for all of us, because some governors would prefer that there will be no test at all, like Governor Gwen Garcia. But you know, we pointed out that around in my province, 41% of those who are found to be positive are asymptomatic. If we just rely on the clinical assessment, clinical and exposure assessment, then that's not a good test in finding out who are infected, because precisely asymptomatic persons can be carriers, no? So we have to make use of a certain test. And we find that possibly antigen may be the best test kit to use because it's not very expensive and we know the result within 10 minutes. That is the authority we're asking from DILG and IATF is for us to allow us to make use of the antigen test. If found positive, then they are quarantined and then they are subjected to a swab. So we know via the PCR test if they are really positive. So if they're positive, so they are quarantined. No? So our kababayas are protected. We know that antigen test is not 100% accurate like the PCR test. But if the result is negative, then they're allowed to enter, but they will be closely monitored by the barangay officials and the BHERTs. They will be monitored if they are really complying strictly with the minimum standards, and they will regularly be checked for symptoms, no? So we find that the antigen test may be the best test to use as for now, and also with regard to those provinces which do not have the molecular laboratory. Alam nyo, Acting Secretary, we are talagang defenseless, no? If we just rely on the clinical and exposure assessment, we are vulnerable to a lot of people coming in. Originally, we believe that the rule applies only to the travelers, and we're supposed to cater to the foreign travelers and domestic travelers. Now, all of a sudden, Reso 101 appeared to be applicable to all, no? Appors and non-appors. And we're concerned about the kababayans or those who are related to the residents of the province that they now all of a sudden want to come in. And a lot of people, thousands, are now applying for the privilege to come in. And of course, they know that there's no more medical certificate, there's no travel authority, there's no quarantine. So parang tuwan-tuwa sila. They think na happy-happy na sila, they can have their vacation. But that's a major concern for all of us. Because we know for a fact that there's a high infection rate in Metro Manila, and many of our relatives and kababayans and ganyan, they'll be coming back. They'll be going back to the provinces. So, wala ho kaming test eh. So, I hope, we will be given that option to make use of the test. We're not saying we will really impose it. Just give us the option, the opportunity to impose even the antigen test because that's even recognized by DOH eh. There is a memorandum order that's a 2020-0512 where they recognize the use of the antigen test. So it's really a lot different from the saliva test, which is not even recognized by the DOH. Antigen test can actually be used. And actually, in practice, some of our governors are using it. I just don't want to mention their names. But they find this very effective. Kasi kailangan may preliminary test muna. And kailangan yung result, malaman ka agad within a few minutes. And that's precisely what the antigen test can do. So sana ho, mabigyan kami ng option, the discretion to make use of it. Other LGUs do not impose a testing requirement upon entry. Like si Governor Gwen Garcia, nauna pa nga ho sa Reso 101 yun eh. Napagalitan pa nga ho eh. Tama pala yung position niya. But the point is, yun nga yung ating yung give us the authority. That will be in line to the local autonomy, to our power of under the General Welfare Clause, police power. At we are allowed to impose local protocols naman, di ho ba? So, ganun lang po, Acting Secretary, and I think USIC EPI naman, we discussed it with USIC EPI, pero until such time that we get this authority, medyo may apprehensions kaming gamitin ho. Because masosyokos nyo ho kami eh. So, ganun ho. Now, on the STL ho, our position is that yung contracts with the AACs, is not within the charter of the PCSO. PCSO cannot engage the services of a service provider. Iba ho yun eh, because under letter A ng section 1, it is only PCSO that can hold and conduct lotteries which include STL. Based on the contract of the AACs, practically it's AAC that is conducting the small town lottery, kaya we're contesting it. Hindi bali ho kung maganda nga yung implementation. But on the ground, the LGUs know that it is not properly done, properly implemented. Because, we don't even know how much is the gross sales. Hindi ho ba? Hindi naman nakalink ho yung kanilang sales dito sa PCSO. Nobody knows eh. And then there is much complaint about how the winners are known. Sila ho yung nagdodraw eh. Sabi nga nila, this is legalized wetting. We believe in the program. We know it will bring much money to the national government. Pero what's the effect naman on the local government people? Hindi ho ba? Yun ang probably we can come up with a happy compromise, a good solution to this, no? Like we're suggesting, baka we make use of the device, yung where one can issue already a ticket with the use of the device. Lalabas ho yung ticket, ganon. May nabibili hong ganyan eh. At least monitored ho, and then we know na talagang pasok lahat yung gross sales. No? Secondly, yun namang yung drawing ng winning numbers, pwede naman ho ilagay na sa PCSO yan eh. Bakit sila ho yung nagdodraw? Nandyan ho yung problema eh. Hindi natin alam kung tama yung dinodraw na winning numbers, di ho ba? And lastly, ano naman ho yung share ng provincial government? Imagine, ang dami hong constituents nila that are affected by the STL. Ang dami hong nagbibet, kahit bata, kahit maliit. Yung mga perang dapat gamitin, lalo during this pandemic. Pero what share does the local government get out of it? Baka we should craft kahit a MOA or something na meron namang magandang return to the province. Kasi sabi nga nila, yung pera galing sa amin, inilalabas lang ng AAC. Ang liit-liit ho nung naibibigay ho ngayon, Acting Secretary Florese. We had a talk with General Garma. Sabi nila, ito yung charity fund. Aba, yung natira sa amin, 2% ba o 0.2% na lang? Ay, wala pa ho. Hindi pa daw dumadating. So, nakita nyo ho, it's all to the disadvantage of the local government unit. Kaya nga itong si Governor dito, saludo ho ako dito, talagang pinaglalaban yung karapatan ng LGUs eh. Oho, pero talagang we believe that medyo hindi ho maganda yung epekto sa atin. We know that the government should earn money, may income ho. Pero tingnan naman ho natin yung concerns ng ating LGUs. How about the business permit? They don't even get the business permit. We are bypassed. We are disregarded. Can you imagine that? So itong STL pala, they can put up a lottery outlet malapit sa simbahan, malapit sa eskwelahan. Kasi sabi nila, wala naman kayong control sa amin. We are national government. But masama ho yun, di ho ba? That goes against the grain. Ibig sabihin ko, against the powers of the local government under the local autonomy nila, under the general welfare clause. This matter should be trashed. We don't really have actually anything against STL. It's the way it's being done. Pwede naman yan eh. Sabi nga namin, kami na lang mag-ooperate niyan. Baka mas maayos pa eh. Baka we're proposing that also para properly done, implemented, tsaka everybody happy ho. Kaya sa authorizing the AACs, they're not reporting their income correctly. Yun nga ho eh. So, ang grabe ho ang effect. So, sana we should sit down with the PCSO sa inyo ho, and let's hammer out an arrangement that is mutually acceptable to all of us, LGU and the national government. Malaking pera ho yan if properly run. How many billions are being lost with this system we're implementing right now? Billions ho yan, the way we compute it. Di ho ba? So, sana ho, Acting Secretary, tingnan ho natin mabuti to kasi affected ho yung ating mga kababayan. Nabibisyo pa ho sa sugal na ganyan, di ho ba? So, I hope, let's discuss and let's find a common ground. Pwede ba ho yan?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Governor Velasco, for your manifestation. That's correct, and I would tend to agree on your points. For the first point, we just relied on what was discussed and recommended by the league, supposedly by as relayed to us by Yusek Dancing, and I think that was the only concession or the only request of the league to have a testing. No, but as you mentioned, it should not only be RT-PCR, but for us to recognize also antigen or even other. So okay lang po sa amin yun. But I was just thinking na yun yung stand ng league. So it was deliberated on by the IETF and it was adopted. But now since you also have another recommendation, we can forward that to the IETF. I can make a strong representation on this in the next IETF meeting, probably next week. Katatapos na sana kagabi, sana naisabi ko na sana na ganun pala yung gusto ng mga LGUs. We will support you, Governor. Alam niyo naman po kami, ang department is for the LGUs. But sometimes, of course, we have to weigh din, no? Napakahirap din kasi yung pag-balance ng economy tsaka yung kahit naman sa ATF, nag-aaway-aaway din yun eh. Debate din yun eh. Between the health, si Secretary Duque, and then kami versus itong mga economic cluster. Minsan maganda naman yung magiging discussion, but at the end of the day, nagkakaroon na ng compromise. So that's how we do it in the IATF. Now on the second point, as I said, I do not want to delve on it. I would rather reply to the letter of the governor. And tama kayo, siguro mas magandang pag-usapan na lang ito with the PCSO, kami and sa inyo. let's come up with a win-win solution, because I know beyond legalities, beyond legal grounds, meron tong other reasons Not I don't want to of course I don't want to say it here, but there are other reasons on this. So mas maganda na rin na mag-usap-usap, and then let's come up with kasi meron kayong opinion, meron din kami opinion. Let's try to harmonize and come up with a win-win solution, Go. Thank you.
Po yan. I will
Mr.
just
President.
recognize Governor Rodito Albano for his views. Go ahead, Governor.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Good afternoon, Secretary Densing. Yung yun ang mahirap doon, Secretary Densing, yung Florese, I'm sorry, Secretary Florese, OIC pala, Florese, sorry. Kasi ang nagiging other reasons nito, nangyayari, naiintriga po kami doon sa mga paratang nitong ididemanda ko na itong Sahara kasi sinasabi naghihingi raw ako ng dagdag o humingi raw ako ng lagay dun sa nagpapalaro dun sa amin, yung AAC sa amin. Alam mo, itong mga AACs na ito, naabutan ko lang po ito. Just like yung say Secretary kay Chairperson Garma, sabi niya, yung STL, naabutan niya rin po itong STL nung panahon niya. So, sa amin kasi, ang query namin, nung naabutan ko ito, ang sabi ni Presidente sa amin, kung ayaw ng lokal, huwag pilitin. Kasi ang nangyayari, katulad makita mo, Secretary Flores, sa Davao wala hong STL. Kasi ayaw ho ng local doon. Maski ho doon sa mga ibang areas, katulad ng Quezon City or iba pang parts, pag ayaw po ng local, ayaw po nila. Kasi yung nangyayari rito, nade-drain po yung economy ng probinsya. Minsan nawawala sa amin 20 million to 30 million a month. Pumupunta ho sa bangka o pumupunta ho sa PCSO. Sabihin na natin, 30 million times 12 months, that will be 360 million a year ang madedrain sa economy ng Isabela. Kung mangyari ho yan, lahat po ng ayuda ng national government sa atin in this pandemic, mapupunta lang po sa tayaan ng tao. So, kung gagawa ho tayo ng win-win solution, sana ho kung may win-win solution dito, pag-usapan ng mabuti. Kasi marami na hong paratang na lumalabas na yung mga governors humihingi ho ng karagdagan lagay daw sa kanila. Kaya gusto ko nga ho idemanda yung, ewan ko kung sino yung president ng Sahara Corporation dito. Naglabas na sa dyaryo ng paratang na sabi, nagpapahingi raw ako ng dagdag do sa binibigay nilang monthly do sa mga officials na that's bribery. Kailangan i-prove nila yan sa korte. And yet, napapasalamat din ako sa inyo at nakinig kayo dun sa opinion ni at least si President Presby. Hindi na opinion to kasi interpretation na ng batas ito dahil po siya ay isa na pong, siya po ay naging isang Supreme Court Justice as against a DOJ opinion. Opinion lang ho yun ng DOJ. Siya ho, pwede na ho siya mag-interpret ng law bagamat siya naging governor ngayon kasi po dati ho siyang Supreme Court Justice. At least kung yung legal ho nung sinasabi nila doon sa legality ng AACs, ang pwede ho mag-interpret yan, yung Supreme Court, and at least napakinggan na natin from the horse's mouth kay Supreme Court Justice Presby Velasco. I am not against PCSO, Secretary Florese, no? Pero yung mga actuations lang, nung mga kinukuha nilang AACs, at saka yung pagrespeto sana sa local, sana irespeto po nila na mabuti yung mga local government officials, lalo na doon sa areas ng operations nila. Kasi nambabastos na po sila Nagkataas, ginagamit pa po nila yung NBI para iharas yung mga mayors at saka yung mga barangay captains. Yun po ang isinusumbong namin sa inyo, Secretary Florese. Actually, humingi ako ng appointment sa inyo dahil kulang ho yung oras natin at hindi ho tayo magkatugma doon sa oras. Salamat at nabigyan nyo rin ako ng opportunity na makipag-appointment sa inyo. Kaya lang, nagkulang-kulang na ho yung oras natin. At least, nandito na ho tayong dalawa, at least nakapag-usap na tayo. Thank you very much, Secretary Flores.
Thank you, Gobro dito.
Thank you.
Maganda po yung kanyang sinabi at na-discuss ho mabuti yung mga issues. Oho. So I'll recognize ho si Governor Abet Garcia. He has something to say on another matter, yung isabong naman ho. Go ahead, Gov Abet.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President, Governor Velasco. And good afternoon, OIC Secretary Florese. Tatanong ko lang po kung ano ho ba yung latest guidelines or instruction or policy ng DILG o ng ating IATF with regards to e-sabong or sabong in general.
Well, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, as far as the department and the IATF is concerned, we issued the guidelines on the limited attendance of mananabong sa yung usual sabong. But as far as sa isabong as far as I am concerned, I think that's illegal. No, wala kasing wala kaming reference on this except for the sabong that is being allowed in a MGCQ area on a limited number of participants dun sa sabungan mismo. So as far as the e-sabong, I'm sorry, I cannot give my response on that, except that it is my impression it is not authorized. But I know there are some that are conducting the e-sabong. I don't really know, but as I said, that is how far I know, Governor, Mr. Chair.
Okay, are you okay with you? Thank you po for that information. So isabong is not authorized. Actually, I think under existing IATF rules, hindi pa ho approve yan eh. Yun lang actual na sabong but very restricted. So thank you po, Acting Secretary Florese, for that. Meron ba bang magtatanong kay Acting Secretary Florese o kay Yusek Densing o kay Yusek Iringan? Si Gob Benho. Sige ho.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon po, Secretary. I confirm the statement of Governor Albano na sinabi nga ni Pangulo, kung ayaw ng mga LGUs, huwag pilitin, huwag anuhin. Di ba? Yung mga issues na yun. Kasi ang gaganda ng mga points ni Justice Velasco pwede ba yun na papasok na lang dyan, hindi namin alam. Paano nga kung nasa gilid ng simbahan yan, eskwelahan, at saka mga kubrador niya, mga bata or what, wala tayong control hindi natin mapatas yung correction. Alam nyo naman talaga yan. Front lang talaga yung STL na yan wala naman kami magawa dahil nga ang pinagpangalandakan nila, national sila franchisee or sub-agents Kaya yun ang saka masama po ko dyan, yun nga, yung sinasabi, nagpapadagdag. Ito, wala naman tong mga gobernador, unfair ho yun, no? Ang hinihiling lang ho namin, ayusin, no? At isatama sa batas yung implementation niyan. Hindi naman DOJ yun, gobernador dito, GO's Government Corporate Council, di ba?
May DOJ opinion, Governor Ben, at saka may Government Council opinion din. Kaya yun ang binigay nila kay Secretary Florese, yung DOJ opinion. Kaya nga sinasabi ko kay Secretary, at least from the horse's mouth, yung LPP President natin, dating Associate Justice ng Supreme Court. So, siya na ang pwede mag-interpret talaga nung batas na tinatawag. Hindi na pwede yung mga opinion. Kasi yung mga opinion, kahit sino pwede magbigay ng opinion Kahit pa ako, pwede ako magbigay ng opinion. Kahit si DOJ, pwede. At saka nakita naman natin yung opinion ng DOJ nung panahon ng, franchise ng ABS-CBN. Sinabi ng DOJ, di ba, na pwedeng magbigay ng provisional franchise ng Congress. Pero sinalungat ng OSG, sabi ng OSG, hindi pwede. At saka kasi opinion lang yon, wala naman full effect nung batas. Tama po ba, Justice President, okay, Father of the Lord, Velasco?
Basta yung sa amin ho, Secretary, isa tama lang ho yung implementation. Hindi naman mawawala na yung laro na yan at saka pero kung hindi naman tama yung pag-implement yan, at alos kami, kami rin na nananagot doon sa sa baba eh. Hindi nga namin alam kung magkano yung kinikita yan ng mga sub-agents sa aming probinsya. Walang inventory, walang report. Kasi nga mga papel-papel lang ho yan eh. Hindi naman yung security paper ang ginagamit ho yan eh. Bibigyan ka lang ng papel, tataya ka na dyan. Tapos, wala na. Ano yan sa national government? The national government is also being robbed of its rightful share from this activity. So yun lang naman ho, Mr. Secretary, na matulungan kami na kasi narinig ko talaga sa Pangulo yan, sinabi niya kung ayaw ng mga LGUs, dapat wag pilitin yan.
Thank you, Gov. Ben. Ito naman ho, si EVP Governor Susan Yap ng Tarlac. She has concerns about yung Pogo and also yung Isabong. Go ahead, Gov. Susan.
I just wanted, good afternoon po, Yusek Flores. You mentioned earlier, hindi allowed ang Isabong?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Wala lang akong reference about it. But as far as I know, yun hindi siya allowed.
It's ongoing.
Yeah, I know.
So, we just want to be clear, because if you say it is not allowed, then we might be reneging our duties and not monitoring it because it's ongoing.
Probably I can just research on this, Mr. Chair. Pero wala kasi kung alam dito sa pero yun nga pagkaalam ko, it's not allowed. Just give me time to research on this, Gov. Thank you.
Thank you, kasi it's really online and we have to know. If it's not allowed, then we will take action. Thank you.
Acting Secretary Flores, it's really a major concern for all of us, no? If this Isabong is being allowed. Because I think yung scheme ho dyan, yung iba ho nilalagay sa isang restaurant, yung Isabong. And then yung concern namin ho dyan, araw-araw ho baka nakababad na ho yung mga sabungero namin. Yun ho ang danger talaga eh. So I hope the DILG will look into this right away. Kasi mabigat ho yung effect doon sa mga sabungero. Siyempre nasisira ho yung hanap buhay. Ganun ho yung ibang scheme eh. Doon mismo sa mga restaurant or ganyang mga eateries, doon nilalagay mismo yung Isabong para hong inintegrate yung betting station. Nandun ho sa nagbababad ho lalo yung mga sabungero doon. Buong araw na ho nakababad doon, baka hindi na ho nagtatrabaho. Anyway, that's another matter po and I hope you can take some action on this, no ho? Now, in relation ho doon sa STL, yung DOJ opinion na ho yun, it concerns the yung authorized sellers ng PCSO. So very minor ho yung function nila, it's just a selling of ticket. So yung opinion ho ng DOJ, iba ho yung factual setting as compared to what's happening right now. Because yung AACs ho, talagang they're the ones conducting the STL themselves. Iba ho yung factual setting. Kaya yung DOJ opinion na yun cannot be used here eh. It cannot be used as a precedent to this present situation. Kasi ho yung mga lotto sellers, kahit ho, mga iba-ibang tao, pero yun lang ho ang ginagawa nila, is only selling. Pero dito sa AAC ho, they are the ones actually conducting the STL. And that's a violation of Letter A, Section 1 of the PCSO Charter. Because precisely, it is only PCSO that can conduct the lottery. Yun ho ang difference eh. I don't think we can apply yung DOJ ruling na yon. It has no application because it has a different factual setting. Iba ho yung facts and circumstances of that particular case. Dito, EAC, they actually conduct the STL from selling, drawing the winning tickets, tapos paying them. Sila din yung nagsusupervise ng mga tao nila. Ganun ho eh, it's totally different. Kaya talaga ho, we should probably sit down and talagang hammer out the best way of implementing it. Marami na hong comments dito eh. And I think billions are being lost if we continue this kind of operation. At saka more particularly ho, parang patently illegal ho eh. Patently illegal. Anyway, sabi nyo nga, sub judice ho dun sa isang case. So, okay na ho. Any other governors at nakakaya
Let me
na
just
kay
respond,
acting secretary. ang tagal na po nung pinag-intay. Meron
Let
ba
me
bang
just-
governors? Opo, may sasabihin po kayo?
Yeah.
Sige, go ahead po.
Let me just respond to finally close the issues. Well, I defer to the former Supreme Court Justice, the Governor Velasco. Of course, you know more. But then, yun sabi ko nga kanina, maganda na rin to na pag-usapan nyo so that this give us the opportunity to at least clarify matters. And I can only I understand your sentiments. No, my wife was also a former mayor. Naintindihan ko yun eh, na bakit hindi humingi ng business permit to, ganyan. But then, yung ano naman, yung DOJ opinion, that was not given to us by the PCSO. That was through the research of our legal service. But then again, I would submit to to the expertise of the former I respect much your views. So maganda na rin yung magkaroon na magkaliwanagan so that matapos na rin to, no? Maganda na rin yun na pag-usapan natin so that we could kung kailangan ng compromise, di compromise. Ang importante dito, a win-win solution to the national government and to the local government. I'm sorry kay Governor Albano, hindi talaga kami magkatagpo eh. Ang maganda na nga sana kung nagkausap kami. But of course, hindi ko po kilala yung yung AAC na yun, yung sinasabi niyo Sahara. Pumunta lang sa amin kasi si PCSO GM, si Garma. So yun po yung pinagmumulan namin. And then yung sa Isabong, doon din kasi ako nagtataka eh. Although ayaw kasi namin pakialaman ito basta mga illegal eh. Of course, pwede naman namin pakialaman kanya lang. We have other things to do eh. Nagtataka lang ako, we allowed the Isabong with limited number. I think mga 6-7 lang yata ina-allow, yung gaffer, yung yung nagpapanap. Nagtataka lang ako, saan yung mga mamumusta? And they can only do that through virtual. Di ba? So baka yun ang baka yun ang pinagmumulan ng Isabong eh. So I'll just check on that, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, Governor Velasco. Thank you.
Okay ho, I don't think there are any more questions from the governors. We would like to extend our heartfelt... Yes, sino yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. OIC USLG Marlo Iringan po. Just may I make some recommendation?
Okay. Yusek Iringan, OIC Yusek. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And once again, good afternoon to all our governors. Of course, to our OIC Secretary, Yusek Bernardo Florese. A recommendation lang, sir. In as much as 2022 will be a very significant year for all of us, particularly our local government units, considering that more responsibilities will be discharged or undertaken by our local government units in as much as there will be more funds that will be released to your level. And tama po yung sabi nyo kanina, malapit na yung 2022, barely 9 months from now, and before you know it's already January 1. That is why our recommendation from the DILG is for our local government units to already take a look at your capacities and capabilities in order to deliver all these additional responsibilities that are expected from you. Particularly looking at your systems and procedures, at your policies and priorities And of course, no, the structure, no, particularly yung organizational structure, making sure that, sabi nyo nga kanina po, we have to make sure that the right people are in the right place in order for you to easily navigate the challenges that we will have in 2022. I just would like to highlight capacity or absorptive capacity of local government units. Alam po natin maraming magagaling na mga LGUs, probinsya, syudad at mga bayan-bayan. Pero hindi rin po lingid sa atin na may mga mababagal at mahihina mga LGUs. So ito po sana yung pagtuunan natin ng pansin, particularly our provinces, because provinces should take a look at the performance of the component city and the municipalities in your respective AORs. Based from experience of the DILG, particularly in the programs, in the projects that we have implemented in the past years, and also looking at the data, particularly on the absorptive capacity of our LGUs, yung kanilang budget utilization rate, may mga LGUs na mababa yung kanilang utilization rate. With the budget that they have way back in 2018, 19, and even in 2020. So for 2022, in as much as the allocation will be greater, we worry that these same LGUs will still have the same low absorptive capacity. So ito po sana yung nilalayo natin. Of course, the national government agencies will help, but primarily higher local government units should also help these lower local government units, and that is part of your oversight function over component cities and municipalities. So definitely LGUs, national government agencies will still be here. And actually, we had a talk with the Department of Budget and Management officials the other day. We are looking forward to the conduct of an inception meeting between individual national government agencies and the different league of municipalities, provinces and cities, and even to the down to the level of the barangay, so that you will also have a better understanding, a clearer idea of what to expect from these national government agencies, no, in the coming days. It was mentioned that national government agencies are mandated to come up with their devolution transition plan. And it would be good if we can have a look on our LGUs can take a look at this transition plan of agencies, so that you will also know what to expect from these sectoral agencies in 2022. So yun lang po, kasama po nyo ang DILG na gumagabay sa ating mga local government units below the provinces. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you po. I see Yusek Iringan. Actually, I think we should really start working on this because 2022 is just around the corner. Ang bilis nung ikot nung axis yata nung ang bilis nung oras eh. But the point is, there is much concern as to how this will be done. No? Sana nga siguro, baka yung DILG muna ang mag-usap-usap muna ho tayo. Kasi kayo naman ho yung nagsusupervise sa amin. Ano ho? And yung Committee on Devolution naman, marami hong involved dyan. Baka it's better that yung mga heads ng different leagues will sit down with you first. Let's form an ad hoc committee on the devolution. Hindi pa itong Committee on Devolution as embodied in the proposed EO. Actually nga ho, wala pa nga yung EO nire-release eh. But even with that, we project that there will be a devolution in 2022. So yun lang ho, baka you can think about it that baka may ad hoc committee lang just within the local government family at saka yung DILG ho, and we can start looking at this and try to review kung ano ba yung mga plano talaga. Kasi ho, we're supposed to do the local development plan. Wala pa ho nagpaplano niyan. Yung national agencies po, I guess they're doing something, pero sa LGU ho, wala pang clear direction as to how we can do do it, no? Kailangan din namin ng katulong diyan. So siguro Yusek Acting Secretary Bernard Florese at saka si Yusek Iringan, si Yusek AP ho, baka we can come up kahit ad hoc lang ho within the DILG family. Baka ho pwede na nating umpisahan on our own. Although alam ko may mga meetings na ho that are being done, ano ho, but medyo yung talagang ito na yung pag-usapan natin, medyo we're in the dark ho talaga ano ho. So yun lang ho at thank you ho, Yusek Iringan.
Thank you,
Ah,
Governor.
So I guess we took much of your time. Mga last parting words na po kay si Yusik Epi po, palagi naman po nakakausap niya. We will just schedule another meeting. Very accommodating po, at saka talagang masipag yan, at saka innovative ho ang approaches. So last few words na lang po kay Acting Secretary Bernard Florese. Acting Sec, baka meron ho kayong panghuli. Rest assured ho, Acting Secretary, of our full support ho sa lahat ng ginagawa ng DILG. Opo. Go ahead, Acting Secretary Florese, yung mga last message sa amin or directions.
Yeah, I just would like to thank the President again for initiating this meeting, and all the governors who are present here and those who are virtually on board. No, maganda yung nagkakaroon tayo ng dialogue, at least nagkakaintindihan, yung mga mga sentiments natin na ilalabas. But rest assured that the DILG will always be supportive of the local government units more than anybody else. So I assure you that even Secretary Anyo has been saying that we are always pro LGU, Mr. Chair, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you po. And I can have some message ho from Yusik Epi Densing. Wala na pala. Sige ho. So maraming salamat ho, Acting Secretary Florese and OIC Yusek Iringan. And we will have another dialogue on these matters. And I hope you will honor us with your acceptance. Salamat po. Okay.